Hi everyone, I'm Blight. Before we get started, if you enjoyed today's narration, don't be afraid to like and subscribe, or leave a comment down below. It would help the channel, and I would sincerely appreciate it. Now, let's get into tonight's narration. And remember, keep the lights on, folks. Trees could move in a forest every night, and you probably wouldn't even notice. There are thousands of the things in even a small forest. You couldn't possibly know the position of every one. Sure, if your go-to spot had moved, you might be suspicious. But even then, if you don't go often, you'd probably just think you misremembered. Forests have few exact landmarks. It's the same all around. You'd be forgiven for not noticing the change, for not noticing that the trees are alive. But when they're at the edge of your window, bridging between the vast empty black of the night and the safety of your own home, you'll notice. When the outside world can tap upon your glass, you notice those things. A child cries. "I think I heard a noise at the window." The mother consoles. "It's just a branch in the breeze, honey. Go back to sleep." You hear that and feel relief from the explanation. I hear that and feel fear. What could be worse than a tree at the window? A tree that was not there yesterday. I've lived on the edge of Inwoods for over a decade. It acts as the border to the west of our small town. There's my street, with Inwoods just beyond the back fencing. The woods continue for miles until the next town. They attempted to chop down the trees a few years back to expand our quaint neighborhood. The project was canceled after just a few days in favor of expanding east instead. What made them change their minds? What did they find that made them want to head in the exact opposite direction? They're afraid of something in those trees, deep within the roots, manifesting in the bark, perhaps the leaves themselves, as they gracefully sway unsuspectingly. They have every right to be terrified. We all do. But I wasn't always scared of Inwoods. Quite the opposite, actually. I had a friend. Her name was Emily. We used to play in the woods often as children, climbing the trees, building dens. Nobody knew that place like us. If trees had moved back then, we'd have known about it. I wish I could still hold those memories fondly, but knowing what I know of the woods now, I cannot in good conscience look back and smile. One memory does stick out to me in particular, though, a special destination that I always held near and dear to my heart. A few minutes' walk through the woods, staying on the dirt path and keeping to the clearings. There's a big tree. It stands alone, proudly, as if there is something different about it. A forest, by definition, is a large group of trees, but this one didn't feel like part of it. It was a tree in a forest, yes, but it was not part of the forest it resided in. This was its own thing. It was special. It quickly became our go-to spot, and one day, we marked it as our own by carving our initials into the bark. W.E. Emily went missing in those same woods just a few days later. It was our last time together. I think about it a lot. I was 12 at the time. My parents didn't let me join the local search parties. They told me I'd be scared. I convinced them to let me join just once, and my reaction to what I saw seemed to prove them right. They thought it was a sign of my trauma, but it wasn't. It was the cause. The big tree was gone. Where our initials once etched into a monument of nature itself was now nothing. Emptiness. Of course, nobody knew the woods like me and Emily. Trees don't move. Everyone told me. You're scared. It's okay. We all are. But trees don't move. It only took me 14 years to prove them wrong. The woods began their creeping a little over a month ago. I was getting ready for bed. Yet, as my glance fell over the window, I noticed a tree over the fence. One that was not there before. The first tree to take a midnight walk. At least, the first I had noticed in over a decade. I found myself watching expectantly, but expectant of what, I'm not sure. I thought maybe I could catch it moving, morphing in the moonlit nighttime air. But it just stood there, staring back at me. Make no mistake, this tree was staring. No eyes to see, but staring all the same. It felt like it wasn't a part of the forest. A tree in a forest that it does not belong to is a curious thought to some, but a feeling I'm used to. Every night, when I went to bed, I would look out the window. More and more trees from the forest seemed to inch closer to my property. Each time, they stopped feeling like a part of the woods. Their membership to that club ends the moment they begin to move. They are their own collective once they do. I didn't tell anyone. I wasn't sure what to say. People thought I was crazy for implying that trees move as a child. Imagine what they'd think if I said it now. But a fact not spoken is a fact all the same. There is a horrifying thing one learns about forests when they begin to shift. They make noise. I wish I could say that it was simply a rustling or creaking as they reroute to their new location. That would almost be peaceful. They make noises that get burnt into your brain. They screech. They roar. They groan in pain. Their loud whispers whimper through the air every night, reminding us that they are on the move. Their mournful lullaby does everything but help me sleep. They distill a fear in me that I haven't truly felt for 14 years. I knew this was connected to Emily's disappearance all that time ago. I'm not the only one that hears the noises, although I'm the only one who truly listens to their meaning. Many of the neighbors have put their houses up for sale already because they cannot stand the nightly symphony of nature. That's what they call it. Nature. Nothing about this is natural. I knew the trees were specifically targeting me after just a week. Nobody else had trees at their window, except me. Once at my home, at the edge of what I call my own, they stopped getting closer. They moved every night, continuing their echoes, but they didn't break through my walls to reach me. The gentle tapping of branches upon my window had an eerie rhythm to them, as if someone were knocking, asking to be let in. I could almost feel their roots below the ground, beating like veins in flesh. It only took 2 nights of that before I decided to chop the branches. I knew they'd just grow back or move to a new position, but I needed to try it. That's when I discovered why the expansion of our town was canceled. Blood dripped from the branches as I cut them. This was not sap. This was red, oozing blood. It smelt metallic, and groans could be heard from deep within the forest with every chop of my tools. I had become the conductor of this symphony. For every chop, a loud, horrific screech echoed throughout the woods. It only took 5 before I couldn't continue. You may have noticed that I haven't referred to it as Inwoods for a while. That's because, as far as I'm concerned, there is no longer an Inwoods. There isn't a single tree that has remained in its spot. They have all chosen to disconnect themselves from Inwoods by moving inwards, towards our town and my life. I'd considered selling with my neighbors, but despite all the new questions I had, this was the closest I had ever come to answering Emily's disappearance. Last week, I had a dream. I hadn't dreamt in a while, or even slept much for that matter. I dreamt of Emily, now an adult, playing among the trees. We had gone into the woods together to remind ourselves of our childhood. "Isn't this fun?" Emily spoke with an unclear voice in this dream, almost groans, but I could still understand her. "This is," I said, vaguely aware of the real world, acutely knowing that I was sleeping. "I just wish you could really be here." "Perhaps I never left. Perhaps I've been trying to find my way back to you." We stared at each other before she spoke again. "Perhaps you can join me." I jolted awake to the sound of the tapping at my window and the distant choir of the forest. Yet, something about this tapping felt different, almost more excited than usual. It scraped along my window after each one, as if to no longer ask to come in, but instead to invite me outside. I peeked through the window. Many of the trees had moved away from my home. Only one was right outside. I was still tired, and my vision felt crooked, but I could clearly make out the letters engraved into the bark. W-E. For a second, I felt calm. I felt the fear of the past 14 years drift away. "Emily?" I spoke aloud. The forest responded with whispers that felt more gentle this time. I made my way downstairs and out the back of the house. I walked right up to the big tree and placed my hand over the initials. For just a moment, there was peace. The groans stopped, as did the tapping of the window. I felt a pressure tightening in my hand at the surface of my palm and fingertips. A creaking sound came not from the forest, but from this very spot on the big tree. It was growing around my hand. It wanted me to join it. It wanted me to become part of the woods. My veins tangling with the roots. My thoughts tangling with the leaves. I pulled away, bits of skin tearing from the outer layers of my hand. The pain I felt was shared. The creaking returned from the forest, louder than I had ever heard it. The forest is not Emily. Emily would not put me in a position like that. She wouldn't ask me to give up my life to become something I'm not. I believe the woods have tangled with Emily's memories. That which she was fond of is now what the trees are fond of. Pieces of her mind scattered across Inwoods the day she vanished, but her soul is not there. A collective network of trees have been given the gift of thought. And it's terrifying. I've lived in this apartment for almost 2 years, and until last night, I thought I knew every inch of it. It's a small, one-bedroom place, just a decent spot that's close to work. The building itself is one of those old Milltown buildings, with an apartment up top and businesses on the lower level, with a hallway that separates the two. It's where the business owners would live when the town was first established. It's in the downtown area of a very, very small town. Nothing exciting. When I first moved in, the landlord, Shane, gave me a blueprint of the unit. A very old blueprint. At the time, I thought it was strange. You see, it's normal to get a layout print when in the process of renting just to see the floor plan. But who gives a blueprint showing the electrical layout, the water line, basically the entire construction layout for a one-bedroom apartment? It was weird. But what made it even more odd was Shane himself. He's always been off. You know the type. Quiet. Always watching. Never really says much unless he absolutely has to. He wears Dahmer-style glasses and combs his hair over a hole in his toboggan. He's balding. I'm Southern. Shut up. He dresses in blue short-sleeve coveralls and adorns himself only in the jewelry that is a few ink pens in his pocket and a very musty odor. The most intimidating part about him is his height. The man is 6'11". Not joking. Anyway, the first day I meet him, he just stood there, staring at me for a moment, before handing over the keys from his Hulk-sized hand, muttering something about making sure everything's in order. Even when he gave me the blueprint, he wouldn't look me in the eye, just said, "You'll want to hold on to this." Like it was some kind of secret. I almost laughed at how serious he was being. I should have asked more questions then, but I'm a dumb welder and I do what I have to get by. Last night, well, trying to fix a leaky pipe under the sink, because Shane's phone for some reason always goes to voicemail when shit goes wrong, I noticed something strange. My hand slipped, and the wrench clanged loudly against the wall behind the cabinet. The sound it made, it wasn't right. It was hollow. For a second, I thought I imagined it, but curiosity got the better of me. I knocked on the wall, and sure enough, there was an empty space behind it. I thought it was kinda odd, but I tried not to let it bug me too much. However, I've read a lot of horror stories, and seen a lot of videos of people finding hidden rooms in their homes, so I didn't sleep much after that. This morning, I pulled out the blueprint that Shane had given me. No hidden rooms, no extra spaces. It was all supposed to be solid, but that hollowed sound kept gnawing at me, so I grabbed a hammer and started chipping away at the wall. Behind it, there was a door. A small, old, wooden door, barely 4 feet high, painted the same color as the wall so it blended in perfectly. I checked the blueprint again. No mention of a door. No mention of a hidden room. Nothing. I can't stop thinking about how weird Shane was when he gave me that blueprint. Why would he go through the trouble of giving me this if it didn't even show this? Why didn't he tell me about the door? Why didn't he look me in the eye? I don't know what's behind it, but something about it feels very wrong. Like it's been waiting all this time, just hidden till now. I'm gonna get to the shop. I got too many orders coming through to worry about it. People need their drive lines and their tanks and trailers repaired. But maybe somebody here knows something about old buildings or can help. Anyway, if anything comes of it, I'll let y'all know. "7 p.m. Friday, at the bar. One little drink won't hurt," said Kylie, sealing her fate and condemning herself to the worst night of her life.
10 p.m. Friday, in the car of a stranger.
I think you passed my street. She was very sure, in fact, that her street had been passed. She'd been looking for it in between the waves of nausea and had seen the sign. She had some doubt. After all, her vision was swimming in and out, so she wasn't sure she had read it correctly. But then again, she had been rather close to it, her head being pressed to the window the way it was. Hey, sir? Did you hear me? I think you passed my... But then, she was interrupted by his large hand smacking her hard across the face. Kylie hadn't noticed in the bar with all those people standing around just how big this guy was. She might not have accepted his offer of a ride if she had noticed. She sat back in her seat in stunned silence, unable to process what was happening.
10:26 p.m. Driving further into nowhere.
Where are you taking me? She asked, after marshaling up her courage. She was rewarded with another smack, harder than the first. Before she could think of how to talk her way out of the situation or to escape, her entire world had faded to black, perhaps because of the harsh slap or the drugs she'd been unwittingly fighting off all night. She'd never know. When she woke up again, she'd be unable to remember the ride at all.
1 a.m. Saturday. Waking up chained to a bed.
Hello? Kylie called out softly. Her head was spinning, and she didn't know where she was. Even the thought of sitting up made her want to be sick. She knew she wasn't home, but she couldn't think of anywhere else she could possibly be, unless she'd been having a terrible dream about being abducted. But that couldn't be true, could it? The last thing she could clearly recall, she'd been supposed to meet up with a friend at a bar. Everything after that was hazy. Surely, if she wasn't in her own bed, she must be on someone else's bed. A friend, or worst case scenario, she'd gotten a little tipsy and was at the home of a one-night stand. In either case, someone would be around. Hello? She called again, a little louder.
Hello?
Someone responded this time. There were too many things about that one word for her to process in the state she was in. It was a deep male voice, and it was warm, welcoming. It was also not coming from beside her in the bed, but from the other side of what sounded like a rather large room. Kylie tried to open her eyes, not sure why she hadn't started with that. Then, she realized they had been open. Everything was just dark. Who are you? She asked, trying to sound braver than she felt.
A friend. 3:30 a.m. Talking to a friend.
I wish I could see you. Her friend had taught her a lot. In the couple hours they had known one another, they had bonded. Dire situations have a way of forcing people who might ordinarily have nothing in common to become the best of allies when facing an enemy. At the end of the day, friendships were all about survival, and Kylie's new friend had taught her a lot about surviving in her new prison. He'd been there for her when she had been sick, and when she had first discovered the chain around her ankle. He'd calmed her down and answered her questions to the best of his ability. He told her about their situation. There was one man and one woman. He wasn't sure what their relationship was. He'd thought once that they were brother and sister, what with them looking alike. But he'd also seen them do things to one another that no siblings should be doing. The man hit harder, but the woman kept a person longer, which was crueler in its own way. As Kylie listened to him describe in only the faintest detail the sorts of things he'd seen in his time there, she felt like being sick all over again, and once or twice she had been. She was scared. She'd never been a tough person, and judging from her friend's assessment of the situation, she didn't think that she'd last very long at all. All things considered, she wasn't sure that she'd want to. Dying would be preferable to her. She didn't want to linger during years of torture like her new friend must have, seeing others come and go. He sounded weak, tired, and in great pain. She never wanted that to be her. The one small thing she would have asked was that she could see her new friend's face. With all the discussion, she felt like she knew him, and she'd rather his face be the last one she saw than the face of her captor. Her eyes had adjusted to the dark somewhat, and she was now sitting on the bed facing the direction his voice came from. But even squinting, she could see no more than a vaguely human-like shape in the dark.
Maybe someday you will,
he answered sadly.
4 a.m. in the dark.
How long do we have?
It varies, but usually they don't come until morning. 5 a.m., not long before sunrise.
I have to ask, is there any way out? Kylie had dreaded asking this question, because she had a feeling she would not like the answer. If there was a way out, surely he'd have taken it. Silence greeted her. Hello?
You could try to fight, but...
But what?
Let me give you a piece of advice. If you fight, do it now, when they come for you. If not, you'll be waiting a long time. For as weak as you feel now, you're not likely to get any stronger. Not here. 6:30 a.m. Waiting.
In her hand, she held a key. It was the spare key to her friend's apartment, and it hadn't been on her keyring yet. If it had been, it would have been in her purse, wherever that creep had taken it. Luckily, he hadn't checked her pockets before chaining her to the filthy bed. It made for a poor weapon, but it was sharp at the end, and it was better than nothing. She'd taken her friend's advice. The captors had keys on them at all times. If she could bring him down, she'd be free. If she could at least hurt him, he'd probably kill her quickly out of rage, and maybe that was the best she could hope for. She'd make her move now, and go for the eyes. She laid on her side, pretending to be asleep, waiting for the footsteps to get closer. She tensed as she felt his weight on the bed, but then she lunged.
6:17 a.m. Lying in blood.
Kylie. She was too tired to answer. The voice came back, louder and more persistent.
Kylie, you need to get up. You need to unchain yourself. It's now or never. You took down the bigger one, but if his woman comes down here before you've moved, you're not going to be strong enough to fight again. Get up, Kylie.
She had won the fight, but only barely. The initial shock and the blood loss from losing the first eye had been enough to weaken him, but that was only a relative term. He'd still been strong enough to beat her bloody, which he had continued to do until his last breath, even as she'd been stabbing away at him with her sad little key. I'm sorry. I can't. She had tried to tell him. She wasn't a good fighter. She wasn't strong. She let the blackness take her again.
11 a.m. Standing behind her new friend.
Coming to, she'd been relieved. The woman hadn't found her yet. She'd thought there would still be time to unlock the two of them and escape together. He hadn't spoken to her, though, not since the sun had risen. She stood behind the other bed, looking at the shape under it.
I'm going to get you out, okay?
She pulled back the sheet from the form and screamed. She jumped away from the frail body with its discolored, pale flesh, causing the lifeless head to fall to one side. She watched with horror as his eyeball fell out and rolled across the floor. She rushed up the stairs, more eager than ever to be home. It wasn't just that her friend was dead. It was that he had obviously been dead for a long time.
It does not matter what I say or add to my testament. You and the others will not believe me, and perhaps it is better this way. The saint in me feels that my being behind these walls is a small price to pay. But the devil ever seeks freedom, does he not? Very well, Mr. Wells. I shall tell you what really happened that night.
It was late April, year 2005, when the now late Mr. Edward Marquise agreed by letter to allow me to view that strange oddity he had secreted away from the rest of the world. He simply referred to it as the mask in all of our long correspondence to one another. To say that I was excited to finally view the object would be a gross understatement. It wasn't until I got to his mansion and seen the grave expression on his face that I questioned my motives to see the object and hopefully purchase it. I have always had a bit of an obsession with occultism and the macabre antiques tied to it. I have heard stories of the mask, rumors with no real meaning, that is, until one led me to Edward Marquise. He at first disavowed all knowledge of the object, or the cult that was tied to it. It took months of prying at the old man to finally hear his confession, and it seemed thick of regret. I was ever the fool in those days. Edward met me at the door, stating that he had called his staff away for the evening, so that it would just be the two of us. I remember feeling that my friend had an overbearing taste for the dramatic. He offered to show me his gallery of artworks and curios, an offer I accepted, for we had the same tastes, it seemed. After about an hour of dusty tomes and paintings, we retired to his study for brandy. In this time, I tried greatly not to ask about the mask, or press my viewing of it, and my patience was waning. When I had finally brought up the mask, he was startled, swearing off all knowledge of agreeing to allow me to see it. After several moments of discourse about the dangers that it possessed, warnings I now wish I had heeded, he took out a small chest from beneath his desk. It was an elaborate affair, lacquered ebony and polished iron bands. Small etchings covered the box's entirety. I found it odd that the box had no lock on it, yet had a ring for one. The small things that I dismissed astound me now. He sat there for a while, staring at the box, then started.
What do you want to know of the mask, my dear boy? What have you heard?
So, I recounted the little snippets of lore that I had been able to glean together in my years of study on the cult. He laughed at me.
They believe there to be a fallen angel of sorrows that would save all of mankind from sadness, grief, and despair. I pity their naivete. They also believe there to be another entity, a demon of hatred that would always battle with the angel. This mask was made as a vessel for these entities, in hope that they could pull them here, into our world.
He placed the box upon the table before me, and slid it forward. Simply, he commanded,
"Look and see."
and I was compelled to obey. The lid seemed heavy, unnaturally so, as if it weighed several times more than it should. But still, it slid open with wanting. Within the box was a parcel wrapped in linen. I glanced up to my host for confirmation that this is what I sought. He nodded and smiled. It was his first smile since I arrived, and I thought I saw moisture build in his eyes. With nervous hands and almost giddy heart, I carefully, slowly unwrapped the linen. What was within was an object of horror and beauty. Simple, yet complex in its simplicity. It was a mask, smooth, with no real facial features, save 2 eye holes. One side was pure white, the other was black. Beneath each eye was a line of the opposing color, as if it were weeping, and the white side had a black smile colored in, while on the black side had a white frown. In essence, it resembled one of those comedy and tragedy theater masks. But it was so much more. It chilled me to the bone and elicited a yelp for joy. I was so entranced by the mask, lulled into its beauty, I almost didn't hear Mr. Marquis weeping. I remember asking what was wrong, but my eyes didn't leave the mask until his reply was forced and choked with laughter.
He made me do it, boy. I didn't want to do it, but he made me."
As he spoke, a red drop landed upon my hand, drawing my attention to the ceiling. I vividly remember the taste of bile as I retched into my mouth at the sight. 5 bodies, assumedly the staff, were chained tight against the ceiling, ripped to shreds, their faces locked in expressions of horror. The sound of scraping metal drew my eyes to Edward. His face, it was twisted, frozen in a snickering grin, mouth wide, teeth black, and he was crying, but his tears were black. He looked like the mask, or rather, half of the mask, and he held a long knife in his hand, drying blood still on it.
"Isn't it lovely? They will never feel sorrow again."
He began to laugh, but his voice was different, as if it were someone else.
"So, how about it, Nicholas? You want a smile for Ed?"
He asked, just before he lunged at me. I scrambled out of the way, for some reason grabbing the box. As he fell to the floor, I started at him and began bashing his head in. What happened next is vague, and I can just barely remember that I was laughing. It was several hours later when the police picked me up on the side of the highway, covered in blood, clutching my mask in my hands.
"Your mask, Mr. Jacobs?" "Why, yes, Mr. Wells. It was my mask after all. Now tell me, Michael." "Oh, shit."
The final words the cup heard as it fell to the ground after sliding across my desk, having been hit by a careless and forgetful hand, specifically my hand. I always put my cup of water to my left as I sit down, but on this particular day, I had placed it on my right. A seemingly small, insignificant decision, which would have no impact on anybody's day whatsoever, Unless you instinctually assume the space to your right is empty, as it usually would be, and therefore allow your mind to ignore any object that may be there, which is exactly what I did. I looked down. I heard no impact hit the floor, nor did I see anything there. The motion of movement hurtling downwards seemed to have fizzled from existence as I paid attention. For a moment, I almost considered that it may have been a false movement from the corner of my eye, a fault of the mind's design, seen every day by everyone. But no, I had definitely felt and heard my hand hit something. A simple glance at my desk, both sides, confirmed my cup had left the surface. I stood up, checking under the desk. When that yielded no change, I took a peek under my chair. No cup, no puddle, nothing. A certain unease crept into my senses. It felt like trying to name a song and having the lyrics just on the tip of your tongue, or walking into a room and suddenly forgetting why you're there. I was holding this cup just a moment ago. I should be able to reach out and pick it back up. I know I should. Yet here, at my desk, teetering on the edge of unexplainable, my cup wasn't there. It was, then simply wasn't. What do you even do at that point? You know for a fact that you have spilt a drink all over the floor, yet you can't find it. Do you ignore it and hope it turns up eventually? You're prepared to clean it up, to pick up the broken shards of glass, yet your task is suddenly halted. For what reason? I kept looking, wherever I could. The other side of the room? Sure, it could have somehow ended up here, maybe. The dim lighting played tricks on me, momentarily thinking I had located the cup down the back of the sofa, or underneath the table. Each time, the relief was short-lived, as it only ever turned out to be shadows playing tricks on my mind. Why do we do that? Why do we find it so easy to mistake one thing for another when we're in a hurry to find it? No rogue splash of water, no shimmer of glass poking from the carpet. Had it slipped from the desk? Or reality? The cup never showed up. It never will. Neither will the one I dropped the next day, or the next. Before this, I don't even remember the last time I had dropped a cup. It's not something I particularly make a habit of. But now, it's happening daily. Perhaps my brain, subconsciously so, had locked onto this experience. Perhaps I needn't even wonder. I had been telling everyone about the strange event, and it had been on my mind a lot. In hindsight, I guess I was aware of how focused on it my mind had become. Each time, the cup disappeared, just as it had the first time. Each time, however tightly I held on to it, however careful and mindful I tried to be, it happened. It fell to the floor, the same spot as before. It never hit. After that third time, I stopped bringing drinks to my desk. It seemed to be the only place that this would occur. It fixed the unease growing inside of my mind. For a while. Question. What happens if you don't feed a beast? Answer. It goes hunting. I had been sitting at my desk for an hour as I reached to my left for a cup of water. Empty air brushed through my fingers, and my brain, instinctively as ever, had forgotten that I no longer bring drinks to my desk. Getting ready to stand up and quench my thirst, I was paused by a strange noise. A groan? A rumble? A whine? A mix of all three might be the best way to explain it. It seemed to croak through the house, beneath every floorboard and behind every wall. The silence that followed was as uncomfortable as the sound. Still confused by what I had heard, another one of my senses was thrown off next. A strong, familiar smell, akin to a wet dog, moisture trapped in the air, now filling the house with its aroma. Hearing the noise again, I stepped into the hallway. The smell was weaker here, and the sound suddenly felt distant. I felt again like I was searching for something that wasn't there. I almost considered that my mind was playing tricks on me, but I knew it to be real. I knew it as well as I know my own name. Turning around, looking back at my desk, I saw it. It may have only been for a short moment, but I saw it. A hole in my floor where my feet had just stood. An opening to a void where I sit and work every single day. The groaning rumble, louder than ever, now accompanied by a rotting smell. I backed away as the world around me transformed. Thick tendrils grew up the walls, oozing a bronze sludge. The floor beneath me seemed to pulse and breathe, causing me to lose my balance. As I fell to the floor, I closed my eyes, trying to imagine myself anywhere else. Feeling liquid dripping onto me from the ceiling made this difficult to achieve. Had I caused this? Was my house alive? Or was my floor an entrance to a realm beyond comprehension? Whatever the case, something wasn't happy that I stopped dropping cups of water. The sound of whining now mixed with a heartbeat's thump below the floor, and the gentle squelch of the walls coming to life. The air inside this place, which I could no longer describe as my home, seemed to move rhythmically back and forth, swaying one way and the next. My eyes still closed, I could feel hair growing on the floor beneath me, beginning to wrap itself around me, preventing me from moving. I screamed. My scream was all I could hear. I opened my eyes to find myself on my floor. The walls were clean, and the floor had stopped breathing. I went into the kitchen cupboard, and all of my cups were missing. I'm going to buy more after I've moved house. My life is not what you would call privileged. It has been one of endless work and sacrifice. Born into a life of slavery, my life has never truly been my own. My time has always been dictated by others, when to eat and sleep, when to rise and when to rest. Very little of my day could I ever call my own. Still, it could be worse. I am far more fortunate than others, the bastard child of a pharaoh and his handmaiden. My life has been afforded more luxury than most in my station, rather than toil away in the perpetual darkness of the mines, or be subjected to the back-breaking labor of building the great tombs and monoliths of our great leaders. My job is to tend to the personal stallions of the pharaoh, as well as his numerous other household creatures, feeding, bathing, cleaning stables. My tasks are tedious and seem to never end, yet I remind myself it could always be worse. If that should fail to brighten my spirits, I have but to look down the palace walls at the thousands of souls struggling to survive each day as the slave master cracks his whip. My father has never publicly acknowledged that he and I share the same blood, yet I believe he knows. He has always shown far more mercy to me than any other, ignored many of my smaller transgressions. Often I would find him wandering the stables during my routine time to tend to them. We would converse for lengths of time, forming something akin to a relationship, something I never witnessed him do with any other servant in all my years in the palace. As I aged, more of my father's face began to show in mine. I never boasted to others who my father was, for fear of reprisal. But by the age of 12, it was practically undeniable. The queen, who I believe had no prior knowledge of her husband's philandering, grew suspicious, then downright outraged. She began to scorn my mother, constantly having her redo tasks because of inconsequential and often imaginary complaints. On several occasions, she had her chained and whipped for minor infractions. She even went so far as to have her imprisoned for days with no food once. My father had little choice but to stand idly by and let it happen. I do not fault him for this. Any act of interference would have only raised questions better left unasked. Even the Pharaoh of Egypt, ruler of all the lands, a god on earth, must answer to his queen in one form or another. Once the queen had grown weary of tormenting my mother, and my appearance began to take that of my father, her attention shifted to me. Scorned though she was, I believe the queen had a heart, because she was not as vindictive towards me as she had been to my mother. Perhaps she understood that I played no part in the transgression against her and her marriage, that I was nothing more than a byproduct of said transgressions. No, I don't think she was punishing me so much as she was my parents. All of this was nothing more than an inconvenience. The real problem didn't arise for nearly a decade. My father grew ill. The queen summoned the finest healers and holy men in the land, but it was all for naught. The illness progressed, showing no signs of relenting until the pharaoh was nothing more than a shell of his former self. It was clear to everyone in this palace that his time was short on this earth. The pharaoh had a second son. He was born just shy of a year after I was. When we were younger, we often played in the gardens together, but naturally grew apart as we aged, our different stations in life pulling us in opposite directions. To the best of my knowledge, he had never known about our kinship. That was, until my father lay on his deathbed and made his final confession to his younger son. No one was present for the conversation, so I cannot be certain of what was said, but I believe the pharaoh only wanted his younger son to know that he had a sibling. Rather than bring us together, this knowledge only served to drive a wedge between us. The prince immediately began to fear for his legacy, worried that I could usurp the throne from him. The thought had never occurred to me to do so, but as I was the elder son, I was technically within my right to do so. My father died during that conversation. At the time, I thought nothing of it, but recent events have given me cause to reconsider. I am certain that my younger brother killed our king, ending his life before he could tell anyone else. Our pharaoh was laid to rest days later in his glittering sarcophagus, bound tightly in funeral bandages, as he was placed in his tomb among the riches with which to pay for his trip to the afterlife, and several felines to lead him to it. The new pharaoh, my brother, decreed that as his most trusted and faithful servant, I had been chosen to accompany the deceased into the afterlife to better serve him there. All the masses of Egypt cheered, overjoyed at the honor bestowed upon me. Accompanied into the tomb by several guards, I was beaten mercilessly. Barely conscious, I could do nothing but watch through blurred vision as the tomb was sealed, the light becoming nothing more than a sliver before disappearing entirely. I was terrified, but I'd be lying if I denied that the idea of eternity with my father in paradise was appealing. We could finally be together as father and son, not merely king and servant. We would be able to say all the things we were unable to say before. So I did my best to tend to my wounds, wiping away the blood so as to not appear monstrous when we arrived on the other side, and tried to focus on the joyous future ahead. That was over a week ago, I believe. Time is slippery when there's no light to track. I don't understand why I haven't been taken to the afterlife yet. I've managed to slake my thirst with some of the wine entombed with my king. I held off as long as I could, but the wait for the afterlife has taken far longer than I ever imagined it would. I pray to the gods that my father will understand and be forgiving when I see him next. Hunger is a pressing matter, though. Searching as best I could, groping blindly in the abysmal black, I was unable to find any food. My stomach pains me so. My body is growing weaker by the hour. I fear that if Anubis does not arrive soon, it will be too late for me. But hunger and thirst are the least of my worries. What I fear most are the cats. Left without food, their primal nature is beginning to re-emerge. Just a week ago, they were docile and loving, laying with me as I awaited Anubis's arrival, purring as I stroked their fur. Now I fear sleep, for I've awoken to the pain of bites in my sleep. They have the scent of my blood, the aroma of my meat from my open wounds. I can feel them waiting, somewhere in the darkness. They watch my every movement, looking for a moment of weakness, waiting to pounce. I can hear them, licking their chops eagerly, the near silent padding of their footfalls as they circle me, edging in closer, waiting for my hunger to leave me so weak I won't be able to fend them off any longer. Then they will feast. Their purrs are drawing closer, the menace ringing clear. Please, Anubis, come quickly. The higher up people live in a building, the safer they feel leaving their windows open. The ground floor? Absolutely not. What if someone climbs in? The first floor? Well, maybe. People won't exactly climb up. But still, don't leave them open if you're going on holiday. Anything above that? Seems pretty safe. People leave some windows open literally constantly. I mean, what kind of dangers are going to find you so high up? If you live above the 10th floor, you won't want to find out. Leaving a window open could be the most innocent, grave mistake you could possibly make. My warning to you is not about falling from your window ledge. Even windows that are restricted to only open by about an inch are dangerous. If there is the slightest way inside, he will find it. Stories of the thing that hovers circulated when I was a child. Kids would claim that at night they saw something slowly hovering down the street, about 100 feet in the air. They would all have different descriptions of it. A small glowing orb, a creature with red eyes, a dark cylinder. But the stories all hit the same notes. They all looked out their bedroom window at around 3 a.m. They all saw something high in the sky, but not too high. They all immediately felt filled with dread, despite nothing bad actually happening, and had to look away. I have now learnt why. I live on the 11th floor of this student accommodation building. The kitchen is shared with a few other people. I don't really know them that well. We only talk on a need-to-talk basis, although I think a few of them are friends with each other. Regardless, it means that whenever I'm home, I'm in my bedroom. I'm usually awake quite late, whether it be gaming or studying. Usually the former. Last night, I wasn't either, though. I've been stressed a lot lately, and I found myself sitting up in bed, staring out my window. It was cracked open just a bit, to let a small breeze in. I don't know how long I sat like that. It was just relaxing. It was nice to look down at all the people of the night. Some clearly drunk, and others just walking as if it's not the middle of the night. It's that second group I find the most interesting. I find myself making up stories in my head, where they could be going at a time like this, who they are, and whether they do this regularly. At some point, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something not down below or way up high, something right at my level. It was hard to see it in the dark. I wasn't so much looking at this than I was looking at its silhouette, as it moved in front of the dimly lit windows of the building across the road. The room directly across the street had its light on and the curtains open, and it was the best light source I had. It didn't seem to be any shape to me, more like a cloud of smoke, one that didn't rise, but just moved in unnatural ways. I immediately thought back to the childhood stories of the thing that hovers. It began to get closer to my window, slowly, and slower still, but moving all the same. The whole while, I kept looking behind me, as if something was already in the room. This thing made me feel on edge. I thought once it finally reached my window, I'd be able to see it clearly, to see that my imagination was getting carried away. Oh, it's just a bag in the wind, is what I was hoping to think. Instead, I just found my bedroom window covered. Blackness all over it. It was as if my view of the city became a window into the void. I felt dizzy, and my vision felt off, like looking at it was wrong. Every bone in my body was telling me to look away, but I'm glad I didn't, because I noticed some of the smoke beginning to leak through the cracks of the window. I have never closed it so fast. I even locked it, something I never do, because why would you when you live up this high? I felt slightly better immediately. The view slowly came back as the thing that hovers moved away. I had to lie down for a while and clear my head. I had a headache that seemed to punish me for not looking away. Despite this, once it cleared up, I sat back up and looked out my window. I noticed that the room directly across the street from me no longer had its light on. At least, that's what I thought, until I looked closer. It was there. It had covered their window and was getting in. Their window must have been open more than mine, as it didn't take long for it to get inside. I never saw it leave, because I closed my curtains at that point and didn't look outside again. This morning, people are talking about the man who was found dead across the street. I don't know for sure, but my gut tells me that he must have lived in the room I saw it enter. I haven't told anyone what I know yet. I'm scared to, but I have been thinking today about what this thing is. I think I understand its behavior now. Clearly, it feeds on people. But what if it also hates to be seen? It only travels at night, high up enough to not be illuminated by streetlights, but low down enough that it can still climb inside windows. It always has a different shape for every person, one that creeps them out, not one that scares them. Humans love to stare at things that scare them, but we always look away from things we find creepy. Everything about it seems to show that it hates to be seen. A silent killer that only targets people who think they're safe, and does everything it can to make sure you never see it coming. So, if you live above the 10th floor, don't leave your windows open, not unless you're ready to meet the thing that hovers. No, mirrors are not a paranormal portal to a dark dimension. They're mirrors. They reflect light. The issue is when you think you're looking into a mirror that isn't really there. The mirrors in your home, probably fine. Dirty mirrors with smudges on them, probably fine. Mirror on a wall where you know what's on the other side, definitely fine. But if you see a clean mirror in public, on a wall that looks like you can't get behind it, stay away from it. Do not look at the thing pretending to be you. That is not you. I can't say for certain who is orchestrating this, nor do I know why businesses and public bathrooms are agreeing to it. But more and more establishments are building identical bathrooms next to existing ones. I know this because I'm one of the contractors who keeps being hired for this. I have built 3 bathrooms so far, each of which we were told to pay meticulous attention to detail and to build an exact mirror image of an existing bathroom. At first, it didn't seem too strange. The places just needed space for more toilets. Perhaps they were getting a lot of customers. The first job was a generic public restroom in my local town center. The second job was in a restaurant a couple of miles away. The third was for the university of a neighboring city. The fact that each of these separate and very different locations had the exact same request was unsettling, but it was money. Why wouldn't we accept? A few days into the third contract, I was in my local town center, purchasing some supplies for the job. I needed to use the bathroom, so I made my way to the public ones. They're a little hidden through an alleyway, the type you definitely wouldn't use at night. When I got there, I noticed that the bathroom I had helped build was simply not there. They had filled the doorway back in with bricks and cement, as if it was never there. I figured they had realized that having 2 identical bathrooms was silly. They had probably got some people to knock down the shared wall between them to turn it into one larger bathroom facility. But no. Once I was standing inside, it was the exact same size as before. The shared wall, the one with the mirrors across, was still there. They had hardly even cleaned up the place. It was all as filthy as ever. All except for the mirror. The mirror was crystal clear. It didn't make sense. This would indicate a terrible, terrible job had been done. However, we had been paid on time and didn't receive any complaints. As far as my team and I are aware, we did everything perfectly fine. I couldn't understand why they would hide it away. But it wasn't my job to understand. We got paid, and it's up to the client what they do with the work once we leave. We collect 50% of the payment up front, and the other 50% when completed. Once we were done with the third contract, we had to chase up with the restaurant. They still had not paid us the second half, and hadn't even been in contact to tell us why. I made my way down the same day we completed the university bathroom. The restaurant wasn't too busy, as it's not a very popular place. I had been surprised when they needed double the bathroom capacity. As I made my way up to the counter, I noticed that the new restroom we had built was not labeled as such. The door was still there. They had not hidden it like the public restroom. But the sign on it read, "Supply Closet. Staff only." Nobody was at the counter yet. No staff were in sight. Just 2 customers who weren't even paying me any attention. So I pushed the door gently open. And it was not a supply closet. It was the bathroom we had built. I stepped in slowly. Something about the whole situation felt odd. This was the second place trying to hide our work. As I stepped into the center of the room and looked towards the mirror, I noticed no reflection. I stepped slowly towards the sinks and stood in front of them, staring. It was as if I was waiting to see myself, but I wasn't there. I reached out, and my hand went right through. There was no mirror here at all. This was a cutout into the next room. For some reason, I felt I had to prove that to myself. As I climbed through into the original bathroom and stood facing away from the mirror, my only explanation was, again, perhaps they decided to knock down the shared wall to simply expand the room. I figured they must only be halfway finished. This explanation was short-lived, as I turned back around and saw my reflection looking back at me. By this point, confused was an understatement. I wasn't scared either. I was unsettled. But more than anything, I just didn't understand what was going on. I reached out, and sure enough, my hand met my reflection. At this point, I began to wonder whether the mirror was slide away for any reason, like a secret passage between the rooms. That was until I realized my hand hadn't felt the cold touch of a mirror's surface, but the warm and soft feeling of another person's hand. My face dropped. My eyes glazed over with fear. I didn't know how terrified I looked, because my reflection had stopped copying me. He smiled. His hand clasped around mine as I tried to pull away. Our fingers were interlocked as he began to slowly climb through. I truly think I'd have been done for had it not been for the door swinging open at that point.
"Oh, hey, I thought I saw you come in. You're here because we didn't pay you the other half, right?"
My reflection returned to normal, and I backed away from the mirror. My heart was beating out of my chest, and I couldn't take my gaze off myself.
"You like the mirror?"
I was able to look at him as he continued to speak to me.
We didn't want the new bathroom. I can't really get into the details about why we got it. We were forced to and threatened by a third party. They even gave us the money to pay you. Maybe it's some legal loophole for them to get a tax write-off or something. I won't pretend to understand it.
I was able to find words somewhere in my head. So, you have the money?
Well, that's the thing. We were already in debt. Business hasn't been great. We spent it all. But we will get you the money, I promise.
It's okay. Keep it. I walked out of there without turning back, despite being pretty sure I could hear the manager shouting to me. I do not believe these things in the mirrors to be human. I don't know how. I don't know why. But someone is trying extremely hard to allow these things to mimic us without being noticed. Right there, in front of your eyes, something pretending to be you, and you wouldn't even bat an eye. For whatever reason, it is important that they be allowed to copy people, and this is the best that they could come up with. So next time you find yourself in front of a spotlessly clean mirror, don't touch it. They don't like to be noticed. I've been packing boxes for the past few days, moving out of my parents' place and into my own. Admittedly, there wasn't a ton to do. I'm trying to furnish a whole apartment with a bedroom's worth of stuff. It's strange how it can seem like you own so many things until you move to a larger space. Suddenly, all of the things that spent years next to each other have a whole new open area to be spread across. There was one box that was nearly forgotten, because it wasn't a newly packed box. It was a box packed by my parents years ago. The one almost everyone has, and has to make a decision at some point about whether to keep it. The box of your childhood things. If my dad hadn't remembered, it would have sat up in the attic for another few years. I wonder what we would have thought as kids, peering into the future, knowing that all our favorite things end up collecting dust, and only ever thought about when you move house. It's a curious thought. I took the box to my new apartment and began sorting through it. I decided to get it out of the way first, as it was the only box I wasn't sure of the contents. I didn't know how much I'd be keeping, throwing away, or donating. Putting everything into 3 piles was difficult and emotional, but I was able to make a decision for most things. To say it opened a gateway back into my childhood would be wrong, as it didn't. A gateway would imply I could walk through and live it again. What it provided was a window, one which I could only look through and never open. But what a beautiful, crystal clear window it provided. Sorting through that box was one of the happiest moments of the past few years, until I got to the end. Perhaps the reason I'm focusing so much on happiness is that I'm afraid to continue this story. The final item in the box was a diary. My diary. It was pink and shiny. Cliché, but all the TV shows had this sort of thing in them, so it's what I wanted as a kid. I never stuck to many things in my childhood, and this was no different. I used it for about a half a year, and even then I missed about half of the days. So even after 6 months, it would have only had about 100 entries. I sat there and read every single one, each dated about 10 years ago, and each one making me happier. But the smile dropped from my face when the dates crossed a threshold of impossibility.
2 years ago, Dear Diary, I totally forgot about this. My dad got a new job recently and had to store some of his old work stuff in the attic. I helped and found this whilst up there. Reading through the old entries was enchanting, to say the least. Maybe I'll come back sometimes and write more. Alicia.
My handwriting. But I hadn't been up here 2 years ago. My dad didn't get a new job 2 years ago. It didn't make sense. I wasn't exactly scared at that point. I didn't know what to think. I was just confused. And so I read on.
1 year ago. Dear Diary, this again. Although I don't remember writing that last year. How strange. Was still cool to read through all this, though. I've just moved out and found this in a box of old stuff. Good job my dad reminded me about it. I'm hoping that living alone isn't as scary as it seems. I suppose only time will tell. Future me, you got this. Alicia.
How could this be dated a year ago? This all happened, but it happened the same day I had read it, and I certainly never wrote it.
6 months ago. I'm not doing this diary shit. What the hell is this? I've never had a diary in my entire life. How does this thing know everything that has happened to me as a kid?
At this point, I started to freak out. This entry wasn't like the others. It wasn't just confusing for me, but clearly whoever wrote it was also confused and concerned. Except they still seemed to think they're me. The next one changed that.
4 months ago. How odd. This entire journal perfectly describes my life. Up until a couple of years ago. I'm moving out in a few months. I haven't already moved out. But all of the entries as a child perfectly mimic my life. Except for one crucial detail. My name is Rebecca. How on earth could this be?
The next one was the worst.
2 months ago. Dear Diary, someone just broke in. I'm hiding in the attic, and I found my childhood diary. I've called the police, but I'm scared. I just need to take my mind away from this. The police wanted me to stay on the phone, but I was afraid of making noise. I can hear them downstairs. I hope I get to read this again soon. Writing this makes me feel like I'm going to be okay. It turns this into a memory, and not a final day. I wish I had the time to read the past entries, but I don't. I promise I will soon. I just hope that I manage to.
The entry ended there. It's covered in dry blood. At this point, I was physically shaking. But I felt like I had the duty to continue this, and so I did. I took out a pen and wrote, Dear Diary, I don't know what this thing is. Will I remember writing this? What kind of power this book has is beyond me, but whatever is going on, I don't like it. I died? I moved out a year ago. My dad got a new job 2 years ago. My name is Rebecca. None of it makes any sense. My pen ran out of ink, and so I went looking for another one. I intended to finish the entry, but when I returned, the journal was gone. I wonder where it went. There is a house that I spent a good portion of my childhood in, and the house that I, to this day, although no longer living in it, will always call my true home. I have many fond childhood memories in that house, and it's where our family lived the longest. What I'm about to describe are all real events experienced in this house by me and the rest of my family. These are true accounts, and are not exaggerated in any way. We've always known that house was haunted, not to the point of being insane and deadly, like you see in the movies, but plenty of unnerving things have happened there. Let me start by telling you a little bit about the house. The first thing you should know is it's very old. From the 1800s, it used to be a hotel. When my family bought it, I, being the youngest, was only a little kid. We remodeled that house, and even extended it a little. It took a very long time, but eventually, that old, rickety house from the 1800s got a brand new, modern makeover. However, the things lingering in that house which we couldn't see stayed. At first, it started out with smaller things. My older brother would occasionally be falling asleep in his room upstairs, which was always cold, and someone would blow in his ear. He would open his eyes and look, but of course, nobody would be there. We were told by a few different people that a cranky old woman used to live there, who would sit out rocking on her rocking chair on the balcony, which we removed, yelling at people who would walk by. There was one night during which one of my older sisters was sleeping on the couch in the living room, and she started hearing a creaking sound. She described it as wood creaking rhythmically, coming from the spot just outside one of the upstairs windows, which used to be a door that led out to the balcony that no longer exists. One time when I was little, being all adventurous like I was, I took a digital camera up to the furnished attic at night, where it was quiet and pitch black. I made my way into the middle of the room, held up the camera, and started snapping pictures. I could only see what I was taking pictures of when the camera would flash, and then afterwards when I looked at the taken picture on the digital screen, I eventually saw in one of the pictures I had taken while I was facing a wall, a small black spot in the middle of the screen. I took another picture pointing the same way, and saw the spot was still there, but had grown. To me, it looked like some sort of portal to nothingness, a small void of blackness in the room, something that sucked up the light of the flash and didn't reflect any back. As I took more and more pictures of it, it got bigger and bigger, until it was almost covering the entire camera lens. Just blackness. It then occurred to me that rather than growing, this black mass actually seemed to be getting closer and closer to the camera lens. I don't remember anything past that point. I must have run downstairs. Things started getting more physical. I was once in the shower when the water suddenly got cold, and I looked back to find the knob had been turned significantly behind my back. At night, when alone, we each began to hear loud footsteps above us in the biggest room on the second floor. You would only ever hear them if you were alone, or were the only one awake. Once, they were so heavy, it sounded like there was an elephant or something up there, and the ceiling cracked so loud that I half expected it to cave in on me. My sisters shared that room for a long time. Eventually, one of them moved out. Only one remained in it. When she was walking around up there, you could hear her footsteps clearly. The only problem was, I would also hear those footsteps walking around when she wasn't home. Sometimes, I was home alone. My mom was awakened one night when my friend was sleeping over to loud footsteps running up and down the stairs. According to her, it sounded like more than one person, and was practically a stampede. She jumped out of bed, angry at us for being up so late, causing such a racket, opened her bedroom door into the room where you can see the bottom of the stairs, But there was only dead silence and darkness. Everything was still. She thought we must have run upstairs, and she had just missed us. So she went up the stairs and opened the door to the room we were sleeping in, which was my sister's old room, now vacant after they had both moved out. But we were sound asleep. She thought maybe we were faking it, and inspected us closer, and realized that, no, we were clearly out cold, and had been that way for quite a while. She mentioned all this to us the next day, maybe still wanting to think that it was us. But we, of course, had no idea what she was talking about. One night, I was just about to fall asleep when I heard a man's voice, right in my face, whisper the word, "Bang." It pulled me out of my sleep, making my eyes shoot open and look around in the dark room to find nothing. After a minute, still being tired, I brushed it off and closed my eyes again. I started to drift back to sleep when the voice once again quietly whispered, "Bang," in my face again. I opened my eyes again to once again find nothing. This happened a total of 3 times before I was finally able to fall asleep. So many things happened in that house, but after so many years of constant activity, you get used to it, and things that used to frighten you begin to simply annoy you. Sometimes, if you were alone and there was a persistent noise being made where no other person was, like the squeezing and popping sound of plastic water bottles in the kitchen, you could simply look in that direction and say, "Stop it." And sometimes it would just stop. We were eventually able to get the things that were dwelling in that house out, and the activity, after years of persistence, stopped altogether. As I said earlier, I still consider that house my one and only true home, and I always will. I spent years growing up there as a child with my family, and 2 of my close friends, as well as family friends. Despite the occasional paranormal activity, I have many good memories of that place. It is where my mind will always wander back to whenever I think home. I've always been a hiker, not a casual one though. I love the solitude. I love the feeling of being a small, insignificant part of something vast and ancient. The quiet of a forest is a kind of church for me. Or at least, it used to be. Yesterday, I decided to tackle a remote section of the Greenhorn Mountains. It's a rugged, beautiful area that doesn't get a lot of foot traffic. I parked my car at a dusty trailhead, clipped my pack on, and headed into the wild. The first few hours were bliss. The air was cool and smelled of pine and damp earth. The only sounds were the wind in the trees, the chatter of squirrels, and the rhythmic crunch of my boots on the trail. It was perfect. I was about 5 miles in, deep into a section of dense, old-growth forest, when I first heard it. It was a crunch, a heavy one. Anyone who spends time in the woods learns to catalog sounds. A squirrel is a light, frantic skitter. A deer is a delicate snap of a twig followed by silence. This was different. This was the sound of significant weight deliberately breaking a fallen branch. It came from somewhere off to my left, behind a thick stand of firs. I stopped, my ears straining, and scanned the trees. Nothing. I told myself it was probably a buck, a big one, and kept walking, maybe a little faster than before. 100 yards later, I heard it again. Crunch. Closer this time, and it was followed by the sound of something large moving through the undergrowth. A heavy shush, shush, shush of foliage being pushed aside. My blood went cold. This wasn't a deer. This was something big. I slowly, carefully turned my head, and I saw it. Through a gap in the trees, maybe 60, 70 yards back, was a bear. A big, brown bear. Not just big, but massive. Its head was down, sniffing the path where I had just walked. It wasn't just wandering. It was following my trail. My heart hammered against my ribs. I've seen bears before, but always at a safe distance, and they've always been more scared of me than I was of them. This was different. The way it moved, the deliberate, focused way it followed my scent. This was a hunt. Every nature documentary I'd ever seen flooded my brain. Don't run. Running makes you prey. Don't make eye contact. Don't show fear. I took a slow, deep breath, trying to calm the frantic hummingbird in my chest. Okay, I'm okay. There's still distance. I just need to be smart. My plan was simple. Keep moving at a steady pace, putting distance between us, and slowly start to curve my path in a wide arc. The main trail back to the car was about a mile to my east. If I could circle around the bear's position without it realizing I was flanking it, I could get back on the main trail and head for safety. It was a gamble, but it was better than just walking in a straight line, leading it like the Pied Piper of Doom. So I walked. The next hour was the most terrifying, mentally exhausting hour of my life. Every step was deliberate. Every rustle of leaves behind me sent a jolt of pure adrenaline through my system. I didn't dare look back too often, maybe once every 5 minutes. Every time I did, my heart would sink. It was still there, a lumbering black shadow, moving silently between the trees, always keeping the same distance. It was patient. It wasn't in a hurry. It knew it had all the time in the world. The beautiful forest had transformed into a claustrophobic, terrifying labyrinth. Every tree was an obstacle that hid me from it, but also hid it from me. I kept moving, trying to execute my wide, circling maneuver, but the terrain was getting thicker, forcing me into narrow game trails. The distance was closing. I could hear its heavy breathing now, a low, guttural huffing sound that seemed to vibrate through the ground itself. The pretense was over. It knew I knew, and it was done being patient. I glanced over my shoulder. It was only 40 yards away now, and it was moving faster, its walk breaking into a low, loping trot. The rational part of my brain screamed, "Don't run!" But the primal, terrified lizard brain took over. All my clever plans evaporated in a cloud of pure panic. I ran. I crashed through the undergrowth, branches whipping at my face, my lungs burning. I didn't care about the trail anymore. I just ran downhill, hoping to gain speed. Behind me, I heard the bear break into a full charge. The sound was apocalyptic. It wasn't a lumbering beast anymore. It was a freight train of fur and muscle and teeth, snapping trees like twigs. its paws thundering on the forest floor. It was gaining on me. I could feel it. I was going to die. A stupid, terrified death, torn apart in the middle of nowhere. And then I heard the whistle. It was a simple, clear tune, a lilting, 3-note melody, like someone casually whistling a folk song. It cut through the chaos of the chase, clear as a bell. It sounded human. It sounded like help. My brain, desperate for any shred of hope, latched onto it. A ranger? Another hiker? Someone had heard the commotion. The whistle came again, from somewhere ahead and to my right. It was a signal, a direction. Without a second thought, I veered toward the sound. Hope gave my burning legs new strength. I scrambled over a fallen log, my eyes scanning the trees ahead for a flash of color, for a friendly human face. The bear was roaring behind me now, a sound of pure predatory fury. It was so close I could smell its hot, musky scent. "Help!" I screamed, my voice cracking. "I'm here, help me!" The whistling continued, but it seemed farther away now. The notes were fainter, more distant. My heart sank. Was I going the wrong way? Or was my savior moving away from me? Panic surged again. I just had to be faster. I pushed myself harder, my vision starting to tunnel. The sound of the bear was right at my heels. I could practically feel its breath on my neck. I burst through a final curtain of ferns into a small, unnaturally quiet clearing. And I saw him. It wasn't a ranger. Standing in the middle of the clearing was a man, or the shape of a man. He was impossibly tall and thin, like a figure stretched out of a nightmare. He wore tattered, filthy rags that hung from his skeletal frame, and a wide-brimmed, stained hat that was pulled low, shadowing his face. Long, stringy, bone-white hair hung down past his shoulders. He was just standing there, utterly still, turned slightly away from me. He was carrying a large, heavy-looking leather sack over one shoulder. As I stumbled to a halt, my mind struggled to process what I was seeing. He shifted the bag. The top flapped open for a second, and something pale spilled out, landing on the mossy ground with a soft, wet thud. It was a human hand. My brain short-circuited. I stared at the severed hand, then at the sack, and could suddenly make out the lumpy, gruesome shapes within it. The curve of a foot, the unmistakable shape of a human femur, and another hand, its fingers curled into a fist. The stories my grandmother used to tell me, scary folk tales from her village to keep the kids from wandering off at night, crashed into my mind. The impossibly tall, thin man, the sack of bones, the whistling.
El Silban.
The whistler. He turned his head slowly, and I saw his face beneath the brim of the hat. It was a ghastly, emaciated face, with skin stretched tight over a skull, and he smiled. It was a wide, horrifying smile, full of yellow, broken teeth. He wasn't a savior. He was the thing the bear was running from. He was the thing I had to run from too. The whistle hadn't been a call for help. It had been his own hunting song. A roar from behind me snapped me out of my paralysis. The bear crashed into the clearing, its eyes wild, foam flying from its jaws. It saw me. Then it saw the tall thing with a sack of bones. The bear. This massive, terrifying engine of destruction skidded to a halt. A low, guttural growl rumbled in its chest, a sound of fear and aggression all at once. The man in the rags just stood there, his horrible smile never wavering. My survival instinct, which had already been screaming, went into overdrive. I didn't think. I reacted. I threw myself sideways, diving headfirst into a thick, thorny bush at the edge of the clearing. The thorns tore at my skin and clothes, but I didn't care. I was hidden. From my painful hiding spot, I peeked through the leaves. The scene in the clearing was a tableau from hell. The Whistler stood motionless, his sack of horrors resting at his feet. The bear, driven by instinct or territorial rage, rose up onto its hind legs. It stood a full 8, maybe 9 feet tall, a mountain of muscle and claw. It let out a deafening roar that shook the very air and swiped one of its massive paws at the tall, thin man. I didn't wait to see the blow land. I couldn't. I scrambled out from the other side of that bush and ran. I ran back the way I came, away from the clearing, away from the two monsters fighting for the prize. For me. I ran like I had never run in my life, my mind a blank slate of pure terror. And then I heard it. It wasn't a roar. It was a scream. A high-pitched, agonized, animal scream of unbelievable pain. It was the bear. The sound was cut off abruptly, followed by a wet, cracking sound that I will hear in my nightmares for the rest of my life. And then, the whistle started again. But this time it was different. It was loud. It was so close it sounded like it was right behind my ear. And in that moment of ultimate terror, a fragment of the old story, the one my grandmother told me, flashed in my head. A warning. When the whistle sounds far away, he is right beside you. When it sounds close, he is far away, and you have a chance to run. I didn't look back. I just ran. I ran towards the memory of the main trail, the close, cheerful whistling, my only companion. It was my guide, my metronome of terror. As long as it was close, I was gaining distance. The thought was insane, but it was the only thing keeping me going. For 3 minutes, maybe 4, an eternity, I ran with that tune right in my ear, pushing me forward. Then I burst onto the main trail. I recognized it immediately. My car was less than a mile away. I risked a glance behind me. I saw nothing but trees. And the whistle, it was fainter now, more distant, which meant he was coming. He was done with the bear. I have never known a fear like the one that seized me then. I sprinted down that trail, my legs pumping on pure adrenaline. I could hear him coming. I couldn't see him, but I could feel his presence, a cold dread that seemed to chase me, to suck the warmth from the air. The whistling got fainter and fainter, a whisper on the wind. I saw my car through the trees. The glint of sun on the windshield was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. I fumbled for my keys. my hands shaking so violently I dropped them twice. I unlocked the door, threw myself inside, and slammed the lock. I jammed the key into the ignition and turned. The engine roared to life. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I couldn't. I stomped on the gas pedal and the car shot forward, spitting gravel. I drove, and I didn't stop until I saw the lights of this rundown motel. So I'm here now. I don't know what to do. How do you explain this to anyone? But I had to tell someone. I had to warn someone. The things in the woods are real. The old stories are warnings, not entertainment. And if you're ever lost in the deep, dark woods and you hear a whistle, don't run towards it. It's not a friend. It's not help. It's a lure. In 1983, a team of deeply pious scientists conducted a radical experiment in an undisclosed facility. The scientists had theorized that a human without access to any senses or ways to perceive stimuli would be able to perceive the presence of God. They believed that the five senses clouded our awareness of eternity, and without them, a human could actually establish contact with God by thought. An elderly man who claimed to have nothing left to live for was the only test subject to volunteer. To purge him of all his senses, the scientists performed a complex operation in which every sensory nerve connection to the brain was surgically severed. Although the test subject retained full muscular function, he could not see, hear, taste, smell, or feel. With no possible way to communicate with or even sense the outside world, he was alone with his thoughts. Scientists monitored him as he spoke aloud about his state of mind in jumbled, slurred sentences that he couldn't even hear. After 4 days, the man claimed to be hearing hushed, unintelligible voices in his head. Assuming it was an onset of psychosis, the scientists paid little attention to the man's concerns. 2 days later, the man cried that he could hear his dead wife speaking with him, and even more, he could communicate back. The scientists were intrigued, but were not convinced until the subject started naming dead relatives of the scientists. He repeated personal information to the scientists that only their dead spouses and parents would have known. At this point, a sizable portion of the scientists left the study. After a week of conversing with the deceased through his thoughts, the subject became distressed, saying the voices were overwhelming. In every waking moment, his consciousness was bombarded by hundreds of voices that refused to leave him alone. He frequently threw himself against the wall, trying to elicit a pain response. He begged the scientists for sedatives so he could escape the voices by sleeping. This tactic worked for 3 days, until he started having severe night terrors. The subject repeatedly said that he could see and hear the deceased in his dreams. Only a day later, the subject began to scream and claw at his non-functional eyes, hoping to sense something in the physical world. The hysterical subject now said the voices of the dead were deafening and hostile, speaking of hell and the end of the world. At one point, he yelled, "No heaven, no forgiveness," for 5 hours straight. He continually begged to be killed, but the scientists were convinced that he was close to establishing contact with God. After another day, the subject could no longer form coherent sentences. Seemingly mad, he started to bite off chunks of flesh from his arm. The scientists rushed into the test chamber and restrained him to a table so he could not kill himself. After a few hours of being tied down, the subject halted his struggling and screaming. He stared blankly at the ceiling as teardrops silently streaked across his face. For 2 weeks, the subject had to be manually rehydrated due to the constant crying. Eventually, he turned his head and, despite his blindness, made focused eye contact with a scientist for the first time in the study. He whispered,
"I have spoken with God, and He has abandoned us."
And his vital signs stopped.
There was no apparent cause of death.
There's something terribly wrong with my son. He's only 4 months old, but I can still tell that he isn't acting like himself. He used to laugh whenever I made funny faces, but now he just stares at me. He stares at me with a blank, yet strange expression. He used to cry at night, just like a normal infant, but now he just lies there, looking at the ceiling from the comfort of his crib. It's downright weird. I'm not even sure if he's sleeping anymore. Every time I get up in the middle of the night to check on him, he's just lying there with the same facial expression, staring at nothing. He stares at nothing, that is, until I enter the room. Then he turns his attention to me. I don't like it. I truly don't. I decided to take the little guy to the doctor's office shortly after this string of occurrences began. As unsettling as the ordeal seemed, I was more concerned than anything else. This was my only child, after all, and being a single parent tends to leave little room for me to do much else but worry. Sometimes I wish I had someone to share the burden with. For now, it's just me and him. Upon arriving at the doctor's office, I noticed that there was others in the waiting room. A mother, her son, and their service dog. I'm fairly certain the mother was deaf. The boy looked to be about 3 years of age. He looked over at us and smiled, but his amused demeanor was abruptly replaced with what appeared to be a look of terror. He scrambled over to his mom's leg and hid behind it. This is when the dog looked over at us and began barking wildly. It was the weirdest thing. The mother managed to calm both her son and dog down, and the 3 of them took their turn with Dr. Harrison. They eventually left, leaving only my son and me. We continued to wait, while Dr. Harrison prepared for our appointment. The time that then passed must have amounted to only a few mere minutes, but it felt like a hell of a lot longer. I could see my son staring at me out of the corner of my field of vision. I could feel his eyes piercing through mine, even though I refused to look back at him. I can't explain it, but an odd sense of anxiety began growing within me. Luckily, Dr. Harrison came out and saved me from my private anguish. It sounds awful, but I could not bear to be alone with my son any longer. I spoke with Dr. Harrison and explained everything that had been going on, being careful not to tell him about what had just happened in the waiting room. I didn't want him thinking I was crazy. He performed the usual tests on my son and told me that he was a perfectly normal and healthy baby. He even told me that I was lucky that he was so calm at his age. Lucky? Really? I could not wrap my head around this. No, I wasn't. And no, my son was not normal. Normal babies don't act this way. They just don't. I could have ignored the situation and chalked it up to an odd phase that he was going through, one that would hopefully pass in the coming months. But not only did it not pass, it also became much, much worse. I tucked my son into his crib a few nights ago and tried my best to ignore the blank glance that he threw my way. I turned off the light and went to bed. This was my normal routine. At roughly 3 in the morning, I woke up. I don't know why I woke up at such an odd time. I usually sleep through the night. Like a baby, for lack of a less ironic phrase. I am, however, glad that I woke up when I did, due to what I found upon waking. There, on all fours, crawling about on my bed, was none other than my son. How was that even possible? I quickly looked over at the crib. It was just how I left it. There was no way he could have crawled out of there at his age. He surely would have hit the floor with a loud thud and injured himself. So how exactly did he get from his crib to my bed? How? I put my son back in his crib and tried to go back to sleep. I found this task to be nearly impossible, as I couldn't get the image of my son out of my head. When he was crawling on my bed, he was crawling towards me. Not only this, but he still had that blank expression on his face, staring at me as he crawled, his eyes never wavering. He didn't blink, not even once. Why was he crawling in my direction? What would he do when he finally reached me? The questions that filled my frightened brain were too much for me to simply go back to sleep. I stayed up for the rest of the night and spent most of it staring at my son's crib. Eventually, my weariness did catch up with me. Shortly after the sun came up over the horizon, I passed out. It must have been a good hour before I woke up again. After rubbing my eyes a few times and looking over at the crib, I realized something. My son was not in it. I jumped up quickly and investigated. I tossed his blankets around, only to find that it really was empty. He was gone. I looked over at my bed, but he was not there either. I turned my apartment upside down looking for him. I checked every room, every little nook and cranny I could possibly find. While doing this, there was quite a large knot in the pit of my stomach. I could neither tell if I was worried for my son's safety, or if I was just plain scared. Perhaps it was a bit of both. I finished scouring my apartment and went back to my room to catch my breath. What I saw nearly took it away again. There, laying in his crib, was my son, as calm as could be. I walked over to the crib and just stared at him. He, of course, stared back with that unnerving expression of his. I realized then that I was truly frightened of an infant. I looked at him for a few more moments before speaking.
What are you?
His eyes widened upon hearing me speak. I cannot be certain, but I think that maybe, just for a split second, my son might have grinned at me. I know most people find it disturbing, but someone has to do it. I collect dead bodies. It's something I do every day, and it almost never changes. My colleague gets to the scene first to do all the prep work. I turn up a while later to transport them to where they need to be. Not many people know about what I do, but my lack of conversation about it is not out of shame. I am proud of it, and I simply don't want people to view me any differently. Usually, everything goes smoothly. I turn up. The body is already concealed in a bag, and I load it into the vehicle. The whole drive is just me and a body in the back, and maybe my colleague on some days. But yesterday, the drive did not go as it should. The events that transpired mean I will live in fear for the rest of my days, and I may have to give this up. I turned up to the scene. It was a fairly large house on the outskirts of town. A guy that lived alone and never really spoke to anyone. My colleague had probably been the first person to step foot in that house, besides the man himself, in years. I, myself, probably the second. The door had been left unlocked, and I went inside the building. My colleague never leaves the body out in the open, for obvious reasons. Even if the death was outdoors, the body is moved indoors. Sure enough, as usual, a large blue bag full of bumps made the faint outline of a human. It takes a bit of effort to move it into the van, but no more than a few minutes. Picking up a limp, lifeless body is second nature to me. I've been doing it for years. I got the bag down in the back of the van and drove off, headed for the other side of town. It was dark out, and the roads were empty. This is how I like to drive. 5 minutes into the journey, I heard a groan from behind me. A raspy, shaky, agonized groan. It was loud and sharp, piercing through the sounds of the night. The fear that shot through me is indescribable. I felt a pit open in my stomach as every muscle in my body tightened. My hands jolted so hard that I nearly crashed, but I kept control. The back of the van is too dark to see into, so I grabbed my flashlight from under my chair and pulled the vehicle to a complete stop. As I shone it into the back, I saw something I had secretly always feared. The bag was sat upright. I crept closer, trying to be silent. A muffled voice from within the bag spoke.
Hello? Who's there? I can hear you.
I wasn't sure what to do. My colleague always checks their pulse. Had he made a mistake? He must have. I slowly unzipped the bag as the man inside began to scream. We stared at each other, both of our eyes showing the terror within us. His cries echoed beyond the walls of the van, out into the darkness. I wanted to join him and cry myself, as I knew what this meant, but I held it back. In a blind panic, I took my flashlight and struck the man on the head. I know that's unprofessional, as I didn't want to damage his skull, but it was my first instinct. It didn't kill him, though. It didn't even knock him out. He fought me, and I wasn't strong enough. He just kept screaming.
I know what you did. I know what you did.
Why couldn't he be like the rest? I'm ashamed to admit. He got out. He opened the back doors of the van and got out. He was smart about it, too. He climbed over fences so I could only follow him on foot, to stop me from driving after him. After just 5 minutes, he was far enough ahead that I could no longer hear him. And after 10 more minutes, I knew I had lost him completely. I phoned up my colleague and told him. We were furious at each other, yet upset with ourselves How had we both messed up? In my opinion, he's more at fault than me. He usually strangles them properly. How had he messed this one up? The flashlight to the head, even if it had worked, would have still ruined the skull. Strangling is the only way that leaves the body in pristine condition, the way I like it. I didn't get to add this body to my collection, and for fear of being caught, I may have to stop my hobby of collecting corpses entirely. I discovered the meaning of life. Or at least, that's what my eager customers are led to believe. You see, 2 or 3 times a month, I post a listing titled, "The Meaning of Life," to various auction sites. I couple it with a sappy picture of a sunset or rainbow, and a description that reads, "All views are subjective. Results may vary." Most people wouldn't bat an eye at such a ridiculous listing, but there are some gullible folks out there that take the bait. When the bidding ends, I usually take home anywhere from $5 to $12. After I've received my money via PayPal, I ship out the item. What is the item, you might ask? Well, I scribble down an inspirational quote or life lesson onto a piece of paper and mail it out in your standard letter-sized envelope. The quotes are usually from famous writers, historical figures, or the Bible. Some of them include, "If light is in your heart, you will find your way home," quoted from Rumi. "People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel," quoted from Maya Angelou. "It's never too late to be what you might have been," quoted from George Eliot. And that's it. One stamp, a drop in the mailbox, and my work is done. It's as simple as that. You might call me a scammer, or a con artist, or perhaps even a plagiarist. And, in truth, you are correct. I'm taking advantage of the naive people out there who are probably just looking for a sense of purpose in life, all so I can make a quick buck. But I'd like to think most people know it's bullshit and purchase my listing just to see what I'll send them. Besides, I'm a bachelor right out of college. So long as I can make a small dent in my phone bill and eat a packet of ramen each night, I'll sleep just fine. As you might imagine, I receive quite a bit of hate mail. I've learned to ignore angry emails and private messages on the auction sites. As soon as I see that it's from one of my customers, it gets deleted. I do, however, receive the occasional snail mail. It's unavoidable, as my P.O. box is listed on all of the envelopes I send out. It would be pretty easy for me to toss these letters in the trash with the rest of my junk mail, but I never can. Something about receiving a physical letter from someone, good or bad, compels me to read it. I feel that anyone who takes the time to write one deserves to have their voice heard, even if I don't really care for what they have to say. The more physical letters I receive, the more amused I am by them. To paint a better picture, here are a few of my favorite quotes from the fan mail I've received over the years.
"You're nothing but a glorified fortune cookie service. You'll rot in hell for the sins you've committed. Mark my words." "You're a real effing piece of shit. You know that?"
It's reached a point where reading these letters has become the highlight of my week. I've even tacked up some of the better ones on a corkboard in my bedroom. You might think that's sick and a little messed up, but I think it's hilarious. Not all the letters I receive are bad. There's one guy by the name of Red. No last name. That's all he ever writes above his return address. who mails me constantly. He sends me inspirational quotes in exchange for mine. I assume he's a repeat buyer who enjoys paying for and receiving cheerful messages in his mailbox every now and again. A man of class and dignity. My kind of customer. The first quote Red ever sent me was, "The fear of death follows from the fear of life. A man who lives fully is prepared to die at any time." From Mark Twain. This was a great first impression, as Mark Twain is one of my favorite authors. The quote was much appreciated. As such, I hung it up next to the hate mail on my corkboard. Some of the things Red sends me, however, are not corkboard material. Some of the quotes he sends are morbid and depressing, and other times he'll mail me small packages containing little trinkets that I have no use for. It's a little weird, but I figure the guy is depressed and just needs a friend. Maybe the quotes he buys from me are the only thing he has to look forward to each morning. Perhaps the things he sends me are his way of saying thanks. To me, it's a validation that what I'm doing isn't completely sleazy. But here's where things get weird. Today, I received another envelope from Red. I smiled when I pulled it out of my P.O. box. His letters and gifts, no matter how odd, were just as much, if not more of a highlight to my week than the endlessly entertaining hate mail. Upon opening the envelope, however, my smile vanished. Inside was a photograph of me, taken up close through my bedroom window. On the back of the photograph was another one of Red's quotes.
"You look so alone. Where's the meaning in your life?"
Have you ever looked a loved one in the eyes and not recognized what you see? The face is the same, but there's something else. Something that wasn't there before. Something that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, but you don't know why. When my wife came home from the hospital, all I could think was how relieved I was. How happy that she and the baby both made it. We were warned about possible complications with the birth, but I didn't expect her to flatline. My heart almost stopped along with hers. Fortunately, it was almost over, and the doctors saved our daughter before they brought back my wife. She was officially dead for nearly 3 minutes. I'll admit, I cried, and cried again when she opened her eyes. I should have noticed it then. She rested a lot, spent most of her time with our daughter. At first I worried she might have postpartum depression, but she seemed content. No crying, no screaming, no curling up in bed and staying there for days on end. She was always so attentive, making sure our daughter had everything she needed. Something still nagged at me. I couldn't shake the sense that she was different somehow. They say motherhood changes a woman, but I should have known better. One night, I heard her on the baby monitor. She used to sing for our daughter before she was born, but I hadn't heard her sing since. I eagerly listened, hoping I would hear her beautiful voice again. Instead, what I heard gave me chills and made my stomach turn uneasily.
"That's it,"
she said in a soft voice.
"You drink up so you can be nice and healthy when you're older. It may take a decade or two for you to be ripe, but I've waited longer. You're a prize worth waiting for."
Then she laughed, but it wasn't my wife's laugh. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. For days I watched her, finally noticing all the little things that weren't quite right. She barely left the house. Wouldn't let anybody else come see the baby. She even told her own mother not to stop by. That was the final straw. Something was wrong, and I had to know what. I confronted her, the thing that looked like my wife. "What happened to you?" I demanded. She smiled, but it wasn't my wife's smile.
What do you mean?
You know what I mean. You're not my wife. You haven't been for weeks. Who are you? She stopped pretending. I looked into her eyes, and I didn't recognize what I saw.
Well, you were bound to figure it out eventually.
She said,
No, I'm not your wife. Your wife was dead. Or rather, her heart stopped, and she had an out-of-body experience. That lovely body of hers, with all her memories tucked away in the synapses of her brain, was open for the taking. So many of us scrambled to claim it, and I got here first.
She did a smug little curtsy, as though I should be impressed. My eye twitched. And what are you?
You might call me a wandering spirit, or a ghost, or even a demon. Though frankly, I can't remember what I used to be. I don't even know if I started out human. What I do know is that when a person dies, and the spirit leaves it, if they don't come back to claim it when somebody revives them, there are plenty like me who yearn for a physical form. It has been ages since I took over a woman, and with a baby too. There were spirits lining up hoping for a shot at that life. But that's not what I wanted. I want to start over again. I'm tired of being an adult.
I choked as my heart leapt into my throat. You wouldn't. It laughed.
Well, I would, but I can't. She's not old enough. She would need someone to take care of her, and that seems like it would get annoying after a while. Besides, she's so fragile. There's no telling if her body would actually survive.
I won't let you lay a finger on her. I snarled, my fists balled in rage.
Ha! I suppose you'd kill me first. Think that one through a little. If you kill me, and you get caught, then you go to jail, and your poor baby girl grows up an orphan, or bounced around the foster system.
At least she would get to live.
Oh, she wouldn't be dead my way. Simply banished, without a body, until she could find one to jump into, like I did.
It smirked.
Besides, I don't think you have the guts.
I couldn't take it anymore. I had to protect my daughter. My wife was already gone, cursed to some hell I couldn't even imagine. I ran to the kitchen and took a knife from the counter. Then it was scared. It tried to run, but I was too fast. I thought of all the times I had playfully chased her and caught her with kisses and merciless tickling. She would scream with laughter then, but now it was just screaming as I drove the knife into her chest. With its last bit of strength, it wrapped my wife's hands around my throat and squeezed. In all my shock and grief, I didn't fight. My tears ran down her arms as everything faded to black. And that's when I took over his body. I recently saw a video about a site called SeeMeRot.com. Supposedly, on the site, you would see a real corpse rotting in the grave in real time. It was all fake, and might have been some ploy to make money through porn ads. But that video did remind me of something. Rotted Riley. Rotted Riley was a YouTube channel from around 2014 that basically did the same thing as SeeMeRot.com was supposed to do. Show you a corpse rotting in real time. I forgot where I heard about it. Possibly a friend? All I know is that the premise sounded cool to an edgy teen, which I was at the time. The channel had a ton of videos that were hours long, all showing a woman in a coffin. In the earliest upload, you could see the woman pretty clearly. She was in her 20s, blonde hair, wearing a necklace with an R on it, and her eyes were closed. Just by scrolling through the thumbnails, you could see her decomposing over the course of many videos. I followed the channel for a few weeks. Sometimes I'd hop on a live stream. There'd usually be 1 or 2 people in the chat. I think the most I saw was 5. Chat usually had a couple of messages from people, but what I remembered was the pinned message made by the channel that appeared in every stream.
Don't wake up Riley. She's sleeping.
Creepy, sure, but what do you expect from a channel live streaming a decomposing corpse? I just figured it was part of the vibe. I usually had the live stream on in the background while I was doing my edgy teen artwork. The channel just inspired the sort of morbid shit I drew as a teen. Plus, weirdly enough, it felt like I had company while I was drawing. Sure, that company was a decomposing corpse, but it's not like I was the kind of person with better options at the time. I'd sometimes take a look at the stream every so often, completely unfazed by the rotting, bug-eaten corpse. One day, while I was drawing with the stream on in the background, I heard a thump from the video. That was weird, since the live stream didn't have any sound. What would you hear from a corpse? I checked the video. Riley was still in the same position she'd been in this entire time. She was still lying down with her eyes closed. Her skin was still gray and being chewed through by bugs. The normal shit for Riley. I was about to shrug it off when something changed. Her eyes opened. She started turning her head side to side, the skin on her neck ripping like paper. She thrashed about and let out the most harrowing scream I'd ever heard. Chat was exploding, with people losing their minds. The comment I remember most, though, was from the Rotted Riley channel.
Someone woke her up.
I liked creepy stuff, but this entire thing freaked me the hell out. I exited the live stream and tried watching something else to take my mind off of whatever the hell I just saw. The next day, I worked up the nerve to try going to the channel again, only to see that it had been taken down. There wasn't a trace of this channel left on YouTube. Over time, I ended up forgetting about the channel. I think part of it was just me trying to repress what I saw. But then I saw that video on SeeMeRot.com, and this entire thing exploded back into my head. After remembering all of this, I decided to try and look back into it. I couldn't find any archives of the videos or images from the stream. I found vague mentions here and there, but nothing concrete. Most everyone figured this was a hoax or creepypasta. I was about to dismiss this as some weird false memory or Mandela effect thing, when I came across something. A missing person report. The missing person was a woman who disappeared around 2014. She was in her mid-20s, had blonde hair, and wore a necklace with an R on it. Her name was Riley Ashcroft. She is still missing to this day. The spoon floats above my kitchen countertop. I don't remember when it appeared. I think it's always been there, choosing to be ignored. Once I noticed it, I was immediately afraid. How could a spoon float? How could a physical object go against everything I have ever been taught? The spoon does not care what is possible. It is a spoon. It floats upright, with the handle pointing to the floor and the bowl towards the ceiling. It almost never moves. It doesn't need to. It is a spoon. It seems so mundane and simple, but how can something so peculiar be anything but terrifying? This single object defies everything anyone has ever known. A magician may perform tricks, but this spoon is doing something that no human has ever been able to perform. By defying nature in this way, it goes against every rule the universe has ever had and brings the nature of reality into question. But how can this be? It is a spoon. It looks ordinary. Its reflective metal shows no sign of age. Every day, I check if the spoon is still there. It always is. Sometimes I think about touching it, but I can never bring myself to try. I don't think it would allow me anyway. I miss my best friend. They could not see the spoon. I showed them the week it appeared.
Do you see it?
His blank expression, staring right through the countertop, showed me that he could not see. Perhaps his mind could not comprehend it, or perhaps he was not chosen to have this revealed to him. I should have never attempted to show anyone. Unveiling the spoon is not my decision to make. Before he could speak, the spoon moved. The only time it ever has. It lodged itself under his eyelid, only the handle still visible, protruding from the small gap in his eye socket. The handle tilted upwards, putting pressure onto his eye, until it no longer remained in the socket. We were both probably screaming, but I don't remember. My mind was too broken to hear. Blood poured to the floor as the spoon continued to move inside his head, as if it were searching for something. It moved effortlessly, like digging ice cream out of a pot. After what seemed like minutes, although it may have been closer to mere seconds, the spoon returned to its original position, completely clean. The crystal clear reflection of the room remained on its surface. No hints of the horrors that took place just moments prior. At first, my friend fell to the floor. Then, suddenly, he was no longer there. I didn't see him disappear, but I didn't look away either. It was as if different parts of reality seeped together, closing around him. The whole room looked as it always had. I began to wonder if I was crazy. Had anything even just happened? Things were happening too fast for anything to seem real. Things still don't seem real now. I never saw my friend again. I've never told anybody what I saw. I'm not even sure how I would. As I entered my kitchen, I stepped over the spot where my friend had once been. The spoon was next to me. I tried to ignore it, as I often do, but somehow I couldn't look away. Something in the spoon caught my attention. In the inverted reflection where the bowl curves inward, I saw my friend lying at my feet, in a puddle of blood. His eye lay next to him. I tried to look away, but I was not allowed. The privilege of ignorance was taken from me as I relived the events that took place against my friend. Yet all the while, a single thought lodged into my brain as the spoon had once lodged into his. Why is this happening to me? This kitchen utensil doesn't care what anyone thinks. It exists as a portal to the unknown, the only connection between reality and an unexplainable terror. It could have been any object, any physical thing. But here it is, manifesting in my kitchen, a few feet away from where I make sandwiches. It is not a spoon. It is a herald of darkness.
Days 1506.
This counter is how I track what day I'm on. Every day, when I wake up, I type that before I forget. There are a million movies surrounding this. They all focus on comedy. This is not funny. This is a living nightmare.
Posts 1450.
It has been December 13th, 2022 for about 4 years. I have written this Reddit post too many times. I don't post it every day, but I almost always do, in the small hopes that someone's advice will work. When I was only a few days into this, my posts were short, a few sentences at most. I would add more information every day, cramming more and more information in. Eventually, it got to the point where most of my day was spent typing things up, and it got tiring. Whilst this is your first time reading this, I have written slight variations of this post over 1,000 times. Today just happens to be the day where I'm in your timeline. Tomorrow, it'll be the exact same for me, whilst you move on with your life. Asking for advice in person takes too long, and usually, nobody believes me. The internet is the best way to reach a large number of people fast.
Times drove to hospital 907.
My wife is 9 months pregnant. Every day, at 11:49 p.m., she goes into labor. No matter what I do differently, it always happens. On the drive to the hospital, at exactly midnight, everything always goes black, and the day resets to when I was sleeping this morning. I don't even always wake up. Some days, at midnight, I'm suddenly back to dreaming again. Sometimes, the dream even continues the drive to the hospital, and I always wake up before my wife gives birth, and I always cry. A terrifying thought I sometimes have is, what happens to my wife? Is everyone in the world resetting? But I'm the only person with the memories. Am I in a different universe? And the version of me driving the car thinks they've broken the loop. Do I disappear for her, and there's a car crash? That last one is the most terrifying for me. Some days, I don't even drive her down, and she's furious at me for it. I hate to do it, but I like to think I'm saving her from a potential crash. The comments are always slightly different, probably because nothing is truly repeatable. The simple act of me wording this slightly differently each day will cause different outcomes for that day. A few things are usually the same, though. User Brightbites. You're going to comment about how this reminds you of Groundhog Day, and how it's been your nightmare since you were a kid. You're also not going to read down this far, because you never noticed this prediction. User Skipper15C. You're going to comment about trucks. I'm kidding. You're actually going to write down some cocky comment about how I was wrong. And fate doesn't dictate you. Also, you spelled "your" wrong.
Deaths, 197.
I've ended it so many times. In so many ways. It never works. I feel the immense pain it causes, so I always try to pick the fast methods. But no matter what, I always wake up, as if nothing ever happened. I haven't tried it in a few years. I've accepted, now, that death is no way out of here.
Kills, 1.
I've killed someone once. I hate myself for it. Even though I see them every day, alive and well, I can't get their lifeless eyes out of my mind. It was purely out of curiosity. I've tried so many different things in my time trapped, and this is the one I regret most. My neighbor did nothing wrong. I just wanted to see what would happen. I got arrested and taken into custody. Just before midnight, an officer came into the interview room to let me know my wife had gone into labor. He was only halfway through his sentence when midnight hit.
Wife's deaths, 0.
It's crossed my mind. It can't be a coincidence that this keeps happening on the same day my wife goes into labor. I keep thinking, what if it's her? Or the baby? But the only reason I want to break this loop is to see my daughter. It's the only thing I want. The only thing I need. The one thing that can make me sane again after living like this. If killing her breaks the loop, I'd rather be looped forever. I want to see my daughter. I didn't need the money. Too many films are made as a paycheck, a means to pay rent. But the rent, in most of these cases, is actually the construction costs on a new pool. But I could live comfortably off the residuals from my first film for the rest of my life. I get script submissions daily. Not as many as I used to, or as high of quality. I guess that's what happens when your first film is a critical and commercial success. I went from filming nights and weekends to sitting next to Anne Hathaway at the Oscars. She's a sweet woman. Faint scent of lavender. My later films haven't achieved the same acclaim. There's still a decent audience, but my name gets mentioned less and less. I went from groundbreaking artist and toast of the town to a barely mentioned byline. So when the package arrived on my doorway, it piqued my curiosity. I didn't even know it was a script. Usually they're thick, 90 to 120 pages. You can tell immediately what you're holding. This one was thin and arrived late in the evening. I took Millie, my Shih Tzu, out to do her business before bed. I still say our, although it's been 2 years since Jen passed. Bone cancer. Although I am thankful she didn't linger in pain, I still ache for her. Climbing into bed alone is always the worst. So even though it was 2 a.m., I was up with Millie. She finished, and we walked back to the house. At the front door, she started whimpering and sniffing at something. Then I saw it, tucked behind one of the planters. Not hidden, but not easily found either. The envelope was nondescript, not even a label. This struck me as odd, but it was late and I was tired. When we went upstairs, I set it on the nightstand, brushed my teeth, washed my face, stared into the mirror. barely recognizing my own reflection. Sitting in bed, I reached over to turn off the lamps and knocked it onto the floor. Picking it up, before I even knew it, I had opened it. A short script, maybe 10 pages in total, fell out. This piqued my curiosity, because no one sends out short film scripts. No one. There's no money in shorts. No business. I decided to read the first page. It was like nothing I had ever read. No characters. No action. Just images. Yet, it drew me in. I felt something within me stir to life. A long, dormant hunger. A creative impulse. Something I hadn't felt since writing my first film. I saw each scene in my head. It was vivid, like a walking dream, somehow even more real than reality. My dreams that night were feverish, the whole film playing over and over on repeat, growing in intensity. When I woke the next morning, it was even more intense. I had work to do, but all I could think about was the film. Every time I tried to refocus, it would fill my consciousness, pressure building up. So I got my iPhone out, filmed each scene, just as it was in my head. First take every time. That never happens. Perfection. I was mainlining now. Edited it. Overnight. Finished as the sun began to peek over the horizon. I uploaded it on YouTube. Somehow I knew it needed to be anonymous, so I made a throwaway account with a fake email. Once I posted it, the creative flow turned off. With it, my consciousness. Waking up, I didn't know what day it was. Groggy. Millie was whining at the door. I let her off leash. Screw the HOA. I can afford the fines. I flipped on the evening news. An anchor talking about the economy. Then a breaking news report about a viral video of unknown origins. Racked up over 200 million views within 8 hours. I pulled up my YouTube video. It sat at 215 million views. Then I saw below it. My breath hitched in my chest. My heart jackhammering. People had begun to post reaction videos. Those ones where they film themselves over the original video. The first one I clicked on was a woman at the edge of a cliff. She just stared at the video, then walked to the edge of the cliff and jumped off. I have no idea who uploaded it. I wanted to stop, but I couldn't. I pressed on the next one. It was a young man up on a balcony overlooking the city. He watched the video. Then, with blank eyes, he turned and began firing his gun into the crowd. The last one I clicked on was a young mother, her baby in a stroller. I closed my laptop. Metallic taste in the back of my throat, like copper. I didn't want to know what happened to that baby. At the door, Millie's whining to get in, but that's not all. The tone of her whine. I don't know how I know, but I do know. There's another envelope outside the door. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. I know I shouldn't open it, but that feeling. How alive you feel when the muses sing to you. I hadn't felt that alive in a long time. Creativity is like a drug. When you hit that open vein, there's nothing like it. And when that vein closes, it gnaws at you like a hunger. I really shouldn't open it. Jen used to say our appetites would be the seeds of our destruction. I'd laugh at her. I'm not laughing now. I am hungry, though. So very hungry. It's dark now. Thank God it's dark now. This way is better. This way, I cannot see them. They come out during the day, during the night. But night is better. So much better. Because I cannot see them. Sometimes I can feel their breath. Sometimes hot. Right down the base of my neck. Sometimes it is cold. An icy blast that chills me to my very core. Sometimes I can hear them breathing. At first distant, a slow, even pace. Then, as they get closer, excited, panting almost. But I can feel no breath. I can always feel their presence, even when I cannot see them. I've known about their existence since I was 6, maybe longer. Some people call them ghosts, others demons. I've heard the term shadow people tossed around. I refuse to accept this term. They're not people. They can't be people. People don't walk around with bleeding stumps of missing limbs and act like everything is fine. People don't have fangs for teeth and blazing red cores for eyes. People have substance. Those things have none. No, they are not people. I believe that there are thousands of them, though it has occurred that it could be 3 or 4 that can all change shape. Some of them appear somewhat normal. The vast majority are horrible, terrible projections of some eldritch abomination that has long since been lost to the ages of time, or erased intentionally from the history books. It seems that every day they grow bolder. In the beginning, they were nothing more than figments of my imagination, a fairy tale that I took a little too seriously, told to me by my uncle. They would simply hang there, in the corners of my eyes, never approaching, hardly moving. It was 2 years before one approached me. It had waved one of its 4 hands, bleeding and cut wide open down the center, as if someone had taken a blade and run it down the middle finger to the palm in a straight line, extending towards me. It had passed through me. There was nothing to it. I had let out a sigh of relief which, as always, somehow managed to dispel that immense, gripping fear of death that every human being possesses. Since then, things have changed. They have become bolder. After that incident, I thought little of them. Maybe they were just the projections of a fearful, possibly even diseased mind. A mind wrought with disorders. A rotting thing, filled with the stench of decay, the pulsating of maggots, just eating away. I suppose it doesn't matter in the long run. It was another stretch of time before they started moving things, hitting things. I don't know how it works. I'm not a scientist. I hardly have a high school education, but I'll try to make a guess. I think they're concentrating, manifesting themselves into something more real every day. But they started with breaking things in my house. Vases, chairs, the cat. They progressed rapidly. They followed me everywhere I went. It was then that I started to appreciate the true beauty of the night. I can't see them at night. I can hear them, all right, but I cannot see them over my shoulder. I cannot see them breathing heavily and staring at me hungrily, though sometimes I can see the eyes, and from those eyes I can imagine the rest. Eyes bright like the fires of hell. The drawn-out breathing enough for me to tell that it's coming from a horrid, capsized chest, bogged down with rotten waters. Had it simply been breaking things and being horrifying, I may have just left this story on the corroded shelves of my mind. But something happened yesterday that made me realize that I need to share this.
They killed an old woman.
I saw it. I was outside walking. I walk often. I can't stand to sit still for too long without closing my eyes. She was on the opposite side of the street, and she interested me. Dare I say, she captivated me. She could see them too. She looked more frightened than I'd ever seen anybody before. Her wrinkled lips were moving silently in something that I recognize, only because I've recited it endless times myself. It is the chant of the faithful, of the damned, of those who don't know what else to do. She never finished it a second time. The things were upon her quickly. They devoured her. It was silent. It was bloody. I had to try and turn away, but I simply could not. This big one with blades for hands that hung crookedly, like some screwed-up version of a bug's leg, started shredding her remains apart, shoveling them messily into its mouth, which consisted of nothing more than a gaping black chasm. The lips, cracked inhuman things, tinged red. It finally clicked that these things could, and would, kill me. That's when I fled. I should have helped. But by the time that thought went floating through my shocked mind, there wasn't anything I could do. I ran back inside like the coward that I am. That's where I am now. I had a mental debate with myself, some inner turmoil and anguish. But I've decided to share this, so that somebody else knows. Oftentimes I think back to my uncle, the one who told me the story. I never saw him after that. My parents maintained that he had gone on a long vacation, which I was content to believe, until my 16th birthday party, when one of my distant cousins let slip that he had been murdered. Torn apart, they said, limb from limb, a rosary in his hand. And I wonder why he shared the story with me. Why? It's been some time, but I have my rosary at hand. I know the chant.
Our Father, who art in heaven.
The whole 9 yards. I don't think I have anything more to say. If I die, someone now will know how it came about. Over the last few minutes, the fear has really been settling in, because it's dark, but I can see them now. I can see them. Oh God, and they're glowing. They're glowing. That heinous damned yellow light of the sunrise. I'm posting this now, as the sun rises higher, slowly. I hope for the best, but the outlook is bleak. God, how I hate the sun. I wish I couldn't see them. It would be better if I couldn't see them. Somehow. It would be better. A chair appeared in the kitchen. The chair has 2 legs. I'm sure of it. It has to. I count them several times a day. 1, 2, and it ends there. There are 2 legs on this chair. 2, I'm sure. Yet, how can there be 2 legs? How would a chair stand on 2 legs? How does it work? 1 leg on each of the back corners. Yet it still stands. How are there 2 legs? How? But there it is. I count them again. 1, 2. I'm not sure when it first appeared, but it's been in the kitchen for weeks now. I don't dare sit in it. I'm not sure how it would hold me. I don't want to end up like the cat. I found the cat one day, dead. Its body twisted and broken under the chair. It looked like it had been crushed, its fur matted with blood. I wanted to move the chair to see if there was anything I could do, but I do not want to touch this thing. The chair is alive. I'm sure of it. I sound crazy. I know I do. But it's waiting for me to sit in it, so it can kill me like it killed the cat. But I'm not going to give it the satisfaction. I'll never sit in that chair. 2 days ago, 2 agents knocked on my door. They were investigating something, but they wouldn't tell me what. They wouldn't even show me their badges. How was I meant to know who they were? I turned them away, but they came in anyway. As soon as they saw the chair, one of them called someone, and the other spoke to me. He told me they were going to sort everything out and that I shouldn't panic. I could hear the man on the phone, briefly. He mentioned something about dimensions. A scream came from my kitchen, followed by the sound of liquid spilling. We ran in, and on the floor, under the chair, was a puddle of blood and the remnants of human organs. A hand was left on the floor. It's etched into my brain and I can never unsee it. The chair has 2 legs. I counted them. 1, 2. The other agent knelt down to get a closer look. He seemed unfazed. He accidentally touched the chair slightly. It had 2 legs. Then 1. Then 0. I'm not talking about the chair anymore. This man began to disappear in front of me, his body contorting and morphing as blood and organs spilt from him. By the time it was over, much of what had fallen out of him had also disappeared. For a brief moment in the chaos, a brief moment, I counted 3 legs on the chair. It had changed. I don't know why, because I have counted the legs every moment since, and it's only ever 2. 1, 2. 2 legs. Only 2. Why were there 3? 3 is not the same as 2. 3 and 2 are very different, and I do not understand. It's only a difference of 1, but it's also a difference of everything. How were there 3? I woke up this morning and one of the men's heads had appeared on the floor, along with the phone the man was using. I picked up the phone. It still worked. It was covered in blood. The chair still had 2 legs. I called the most recent caller. Someone answered. They thought my name was Jason. My name is not Jason.
Jason?
They said. I didn't pay much attention, as I had decided to count the legs of the chair again.
Jason, was it the chair? Where have you been?
The chair still had 2 legs, but not the same 2 legs. It was both of the back ones, but now it was one at the back and the opposite front leg.
Jason? Hello? The readings say the chair is still moving through the 4th dimension. We need to find it. Did you find it?
My chair has 2 legs, and it's driving me insane. I'm sitting in the chair as I write this. The chair still had 2 legs this morning. I've counted 15 times since my last post. It feels harder to count them each time I do. I couldn't wrap my head around how this chair continued to stand, and it broke everything I knew. Sometimes I would count the back leg first. Sometimes I would count the front leg first. It did not change anything. 2 is always the final leg. I didn't sleep last night. I just stared at the chair. I could feel it staring back at me. I tried not to count the legs too often. Earlier today, a police officer knocked on my door. I didn't get her name whilst she was alive. She showed me a picture of Jason and his colleague, and asked if I knew anything about their disappearances. I don't know if it was my pale face from living a nightmare, or my bloodshot eyes from lack of sleep, but she didn't buy my... No. She came in, pushing past me, and went into the kitchen. I had cleaned up the blood and guts, but it still smells terrible. She took one look at the chair, and looked at me. She could sense something off about the chair, too. I knew I would sound crazy if I told her everything, and I'd get blamed for everything that's happened. That's the chair with 2 legs. I spoke calmly, whilst inside I felt anything but. She did not take this as the warning I hoped it would convey, as she immediately pushed the chair to see if it would fall over. She screamed as her hand seemed to shrink, and as this effect worked its way up her arm, like someone squeezing a tube of toothpaste. She reached for her gun, instinctively using the hand that had just disappeared. Somehow, though, it worked. The gun seemingly floated in the air as she held it. She stared at it for a moment, but only a moment. The gun disappeared, and her arm continued to vanish. Soon, it wasn't everything vanishing, only her skin. Blood poured out. This is the second time I've seen it happen. The second time I've seen the chair consume someone as if they were nothing. I felt myself trembling. I wondered if the chair was alive, if it could think for itself. Does it enjoy what it does? I counted the legs to distract myself. 1, 2. I counted backwards. It didn't change anything. 2, 1. Then, again, it happened. For a brief moment, around the time her heart hit the floor, the chair had 3 legs. Then the chair was gone. She was, too. The blood, the organs, everything. It was as if the chair had cleaned up after itself. I thought it was over. It was not. I reached for a spoon and threw it at where the chair used to be. It froze there, mid-air. A loud bang came from my bedroom as the spoon fell. I slowly made my way into the bedroom. I creaked the door open, and there it was. The chair. 2 legs, both at the front now. I counted out loud just to be sure. 1, 2. Speaking out loud did not change the outcome. I had hoped it would. I still had Jason's phone in my pocket. I wanted to use it, but something else came over me instead. I'd had enough. This chair was driving me insane, so I decided to do what I thought I would never do. The very thought of sitting upon the chair made me feel dread. The kind of dread you get when there's something you know you have to do, but don't want to. Make no mistake, this is something I had to do. Something told me it was the only way forward. As I sat on it, I did one thing differently from everyone else. I made sure that no part of me was touching the ground as I made contact with the chair. I jumped back into it as I sat, I think this is why the chair chose to spare me. I didn't morph, I didn't contort, but the world around me did. Walls moved, furniture shrunk and grew, holes appeared in the floor and ceiling. It slowed to a stop, and I've been too afraid to get up from this chair since. I don't want to touch this morphed world. I couldn't understand why the chair didn't consume me. I thought at first that it was torturing me, killing people in front of me yet refusing to put me out of my misery. But I know better now. I noticed I could see through my wall. There's a gaping hole, yet no debris. I could see my neighbor, sitting in his dining room. I could see through his skin. I could see inside of him. Yet he continues to sit there as if nothing is wrong. I looked down. 1, 2, 3, 4. All 4 legs are here. I sat here in a broken world, yet this chair, it finally makes sense. It finally isn't broken. This chair has 4 legs. I notice surrounding me are the bodies of the chair's previous victims. Jason, the police officer, the other agent, the cat. They were scattered around me as if they were never torn apart. But what did that matter? This chair has 4 legs. There are 4. 4 legs at last. The phone in my pocket rang. This isn't the first time it's rang. I answer it now, with a smile.
Jason, we think we have a lock on the chair. We're coming to get you.
My name isn't Jason, and the chair has 4 legs. I hung up. A few minutes later, 4 agents show up. I could see them through the walls before they even entered. They made their way into my bedroom and seemed to pretend they couldn't see me. One of them spoke into a radio.
The chair is here, but nobody else is.
He didn't know I could see through his skin.
It has 2 legs.
Why was he lying? It has 4. I can count them all.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I spoke out loud to see if they would pretend not to hear me. Hello? They all looked around. One spoke into their radio again.
Someone is here, but they're not on our cross-section of the 4th dimension. They've rotated through it. I don't know how they survived.
He didn't touch the chair, but I did reach out to him as he got closer. I wanted to see if he would stop pretending he couldn't see me. He started screaming. I'm not sure why. He looked fine. In fact, his skin was back. He fell backwards, knocking into all of his colleagues. They all got their skin back. They were all screaming. Then they all dropped to the ground. I think they're dead. But the chair has 4 legs. Everything should be fine. I don't know why these agents were so interested in such a normal chair. They should be more concerned about the rest of the world. Everything is broken. I'm not sure what these agents want, or where they're coming from. I'm still trying to figure out what the agents meant when they spoke about dimensions. They're probably going to send more agents out soon. I wonder if they'll pretend not to see me too. My chair has 4 legs, and it's keeping me sane. It all started on the 14th night of March, the night of my parents' 20th wedding anniversary. It was a wonderful, sunny day, if memory serves. Surprisingly warm for before the beginning of spring. The beautiful weather was perfect for the atmosphere of the day. Being married for 20 years is obviously a momentous occasion, so my parents had booked a table at our favorite Italian restaurant. Of course, this was a formal occasion, so I had my best suit on, and I was just straightening my tie when my phone went off. I'd received a message. That's strange, I thought. That never happens. I checked the message. It was from my mom. It was quite a jumble of numbers and letters, but through the vocabulary stew, I could make out one legible phrase.
Please help me.
It should go without saying that this worried me greatly. So I immediately replied,
Are you okay?
Just as instantly, I got another text which read,
Oops, pocket text.
I sighed with all the relief I had and continued to prepare myself. A few minutes later, I received yet another message, this time from my dad. I checked the text, and once again it was a massive mixture of letters and numbers, with the phrase,
Please help me,
concealed within. Creepy though this was, my dad was always a joker, so I presumed he was just joking around, until I was sent another text saying,
Oops, pocket text.
Now this sparked panic. Pure, unmistakable panic. Exactly half a minute passed when I received the exact same two messages from my sister. This could not be coincidental. It just couldn't. In a state of sheer anxiety, I started to run to the restaurant. I made it about a quarter of the way before I was stopped by a police officer.
Main road's closed,
he said.
Huge car crash.
This was the exact moment I realized just what had happened. I demanded to see the wreckage, a request which I was surprised was allowed. When I got there, it wasn't the remnants of the car that caught my eye, nor the flames billowing from the destroyed vehicle. No, I was horrified to see the lifeless corpses of my mother, father, and sister. I asked for the estimated times of their deaths. All three of them were killed instantly, by the collision, at 5:32. A minute before the very first text. I woke up on March 16th to the smell of crude oil. At first, I thought there was a gas leak or something wrong with my car in the garage. But when I stumbled to the bathroom, my toothbrush had melted into a black puddle in the sink. My phone was a sticky mess on the nightstand. The plastic casing had liquefied overnight, leaving behind the metal frame and glass screen floating in what looked like motor oil. I thought I was losing my mind. By noon, it was clear this wasn't just happening to me. The emergency broadcast came through on my old transistor radio, the only device that still worked since it was mostly metal and wood.
Widespread reports of plastic degradation. Stay indoors. Avoid contact with petroleum-like substances.
But staying indoors was impossible. My refrigerator seals had failed. Food was spoiling. The plastic pipes under my sink had turned into sludge, flooding my kitchen. My car was undrivable. The dashboard, steering wheel cover, and half of the interior components were just gone, melted into pools of black oil that reeked of chemicals. I'm a chemist. Was a chemist. Worked for a small lab before all this started. So when Dr. Chen's research got leaked online 3 days later, I understood what had happened, and I wish I didn't. Chen Industries had been working on plastic-eating bacteria. Sounds great, right? Solve the plastic pollution problem. Except their modified bacteriophages didn't just eat plastic in controlled lab conditions. They spread, and they carried something else with them. Some kind of enzyme that could break down any synthetic polymer. The leaked documents showed they knew it was spreading as early as March 10th, 5 days before my toothbrush melted. 5 days of covering it up while this thing went global. Here's the part that keeps me awake at night. It's not random. The thing is smart. It targets plastic based on molecular structure, and it's getting better at it. Week 1, it only affected simple polymers, polyethylene bags, bottles, containers. Week 2, it started on the complex stuff. Electronics, car parts, medical devices. Now, week 3, it's going after things I didn't even know contained plastic. The coating on my pills, the binding in books, the synthetic fibers in my clothes. I'm down to cotton, wool, and whatever natural materials I can scavenge. But that's not the worst part. Yesterday, I found a dead bird in my yard. When I got closer, I could see its feathers were wrong, discolored, oily. I did some research, and about 30% of bird feathers contain synthetic materials from environmental pollution, microplastics they've ingested over their lifetime. The enzyme is in the food chain now. It's in the water. It's in us. I've been tracking the spread through ham radio networks, one of the few communication methods still working. Reports are coming in from everywhere. Cities are collapsing as infrastructure fails. Planes have been grounded since their composite materials started failing. Hospitals are running out of supplies because everything medical is made of plastic. The government keeps saying they have a solution, that they can neutralize the enzyme. But I've read the leaked research. This thing reproduces. It adapts. And it's designed to spread through bacterial hosts that are literally everywhere in our environment. 3 days ago, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The metal fillings in my teeth have started to taste different, bitter, chemical-like. I looked it up. Modern dental composites contain plastic polymers. I can feel it working inside my mouth. The worst part, I think I know where this is heading. Our bodies are full of synthetic materials we've absorbed over decades. Microplastics in our bloodstream, polymer-based medications, synthetic hormones, artificial joints and implants. My neighbor had a hip replacement 10 years ago. Last week, he started walking with a limp again. Yesterday, he couldn't get out of bed. I'm documenting this because I think I'm running out of time. The taste in my mouth is getting stronger. I've started coughing up something dark. And when I looked in the mirror this morning, I swear I saw an oily sheen on my skin. If you're listening to this, check your house. Look for the oil puddles. Smell the air. If you smell any petroleum where there shouldn't be any, it's already too late for your area. And whatever you do, don't trust the government reports saying this is contained. It's not. It's in the bacterial populations now. It's in the soil, the water, the air we breathe. We created something that can break down the synthetic world we built. But we never asked what would happen when there was nothing left to break down except the synthetic parts of ourselves. I have to go now. The oil is seeping under my door, and I can hear something moving in it. Something that shouldn't exist. I think the bacteria are mutating, getting bigger as they consume more plastic. And I'm starting to think they might be getting hungry for something else. If anyone finds this, tell my family I'm sorry. We thought we were saving the world. Instead, we ended it. The plastic age is over. I just wish I knew what came next.
Update.
It's been 6 hours since I wrote this. The oil is everywhere now. And it's moving. I can see shapes in it. like it's forming patterns, almost like it's trying to communicate. I think the bacteria have become something else, something aware. I'm sealing myself in the bathroom. It's the only room with no plastic, but I can smell the oil seeping through the walls, and the taste in my mouth is getting stronger. I think I'm becoming part of it. It's hard to explain my horrifying situation to people. I spent a good 10 minutes mulling over a clear, succinct title for this post, and I reckon I've probably still raised a few eyebrows. I get it. After all, how can somebody follow you with their back turned? I first noticed him at a train station. A tall man with a tweed jacket, corduroy trousers, and stringy, scraggly hair that appeared to be falling out. He was standing with the tip of his nose mushed against the wall, an unmoving, faceless figure. I smirked to myself, finding him no less odd than the majority of drunkards in the city on a Saturday evening. But when I was getting off my train later, I noticed him again. The same tweed man, as I now call him, pressed up against the back doors. He was still turned away from me, but I recognized the unusual attire and unkempt hair. Still, I thought nothing of it at the time. He had been on the platform. Why wouldn't he be on the same train? It was only as I walked home that things took an unnerving turn. A lone woman walking down eerily silent, dimly lit streets at midnight. It's not something I ever make a habit, but I've always felt safe in my hometown. I live in a sleepy village. There's no nightlife, not even on a Saturday night. And on this particular evening, there wasn't a car or a soul in sight, not even the sound of animals rustling in the bushes or trees. Absolute silence. So, when the clomping began, it was carried clearly by the still night air. I whipped my head around, squinting to make out the source of the sound. Along the hilly road, which stretches a good half-mile, there was a lamppost. One solitary lamppost for the entire road. People have complained to the city council about it, but, like I said, the town's nightlife is always dead. Few people wander the streets once the streetlights come on. I was about 100 yards past the lamppost, wandering through the blackness, when I took another glance over my shoulder, and then I finally saw him. The tweed man. He was walking backwards through the glow of the streetlight. I might still have chalked it up to drunken behavior, but there was something utterly terrifying about his movement. The man's joints seemed to click in shaky, disconnected ways as his limbs jolted backwards, propelling him along the pavement. His torso ricocheted from side to side, and his arms hung limply in his oversized tweed jacket. Terrified beyond comprehension by the unnatural man, I sprinted through the darkness, nearing my street, and right before the turn, I took one more fateful look over my shoulder. The tweed man was somehow only a few yards behind me, still turned away and reverse striding. In a petrifying moment that instilled horror into my heart, the abomination started to bend backwards, almost revealing the face that he had been concealing. His elbow joints cracked ghoulishly, and his frightfully thin fingers stretched towards me. I still hear the wheeze that emanated from his lips, as those inhuman fingers grazed the nape of my neck. I hear it every waking and sleeping moment. A nightmarish wind from a place far beyond our world. Screeching inhumanly myself, I slipped free of the contortionist's grasp and hauled my body down the street, gunning for my house, fumbling with my door keys. The most terrifying thing was the continued silence. Not a sound from that horrific man. But that didn't comfort me. There hadn't been a sound when he inexplicably appeared directly behind me, so I refused to turn around. I slotted the keys into the lock, flung the door open, and shut myself inside the house, panting manically for a solid 10 minutes or so. I half expected to see him outside the door or my front window, but my street was lifeless. I wish that were the end of it, but I've been seeing him everywhere, always with his back turned, sometimes standing still, other times walking backwards in that unhinged, dislocated manner. Train stations, city streets. I'm certain I once saw him behind the water cooler in the office. My colleague laughed and said nobody was there. I try not to be on my own, but crowds don't seem to stop him from coming ever closer. Last night, I thought I saw him in the corner of my room, a silhouette in front of my bedroom door. I screamed in terror, but the man was gone when I turned on the bedside lamp. What do I do? The police were no use, but they never take stalking cases seriously, and what would they even do to protect me from a seemingly supernatural horror? I can't describe this man beyond his clothes. I haven't even seen his face. I have a feeling that nobody lives long. After seeing his face,